You're listening to episode 206 of the Comics Pals. We're a group of comic book journalists and friends who record a podcast together because we don't talk enough about comics in our daily lives.
Guys, I think there's actually a fourth Joker.
Is that you?
No, that's not funny. So, in the mail today, I got a Swamp Thing with a clown smiley face on it, and I'm pretty sure Marco's been Joker pilled.
Oh.
You know, if any of us was going to be a failed comedian, I would have assumed it was you, but Marco probably would have been the runner-up in my mind. So I guess that's
I think it'd be Cale.
Well, I can see that. Yeah, I've got the anger. Yeah, got the internalized anger that a bad comedian would have.
Definitely.
Oh,
The
no.
movie Joker is Cale's origin.
Oh, no.
Okay, that's a little harsh.
Do you think that's funny, Cale? Yes, and I'm tired of pretending that it's not.
Oh, no.
You guys just got to get on my level. That's why I didn't see the movie. I didn't need to.
Hey, you lived
know,
it.
It's
my
experience.
autobiography.
Anyway, let's not argue in front of our guest. Comics editor extraordinaire, writer, critic, everything under the sun, I feel like. Claire Napier, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I can't believe I entered to all this back chat about my cousin Jack.
I was gonna ask.
And how is old Jack?
He's all right.
Mad as a hatter.
So, yeah, Cale, thanks for inviting a family friend on the show.
You know, you guys always tell me you love my wife. Why don't you bring more of your family on? Here I go. We're not related.
As long as
That's what we in the biz call a joke.
Claire doesn't need that reputation of being related to you.
Yeah, I don't blame her.
So we have never had the opportunity to have an editor on the show. 206 or 205 episodes prior to now, and it just hasn't happened. So I'm personally really excited to talk to you because I have so many questions about the process of editing and what it takes to bring out the best in a story and what an editor brings to it. And I feel like we've had the conversation on the show with our limited knowledge. So hopefully today you can enlighten us and smarten us up a little bit.
I'd love to.
So before we get into all that, I love to start with kind of how you got into comics. How did you find the medium? I think we all come into it in a different way.
Well, it's a question with two answers because as a child, I read magazines at the weekend, which that was in like the early 90s. So the British magazine comic tradition was still fairly strong. So I read Bunty, which was a girls' magazine, which had, problem pages and articles and comics. It used to have more comics. They sort of gradually started to leave, but it was still there. So every weekend I was sitting, reading my comics, but I didn't, that wasn't like reading comics in the lifestyle sense that we often mean it today. It was just existing in regular culture. So when I was a teenager, I was a big fan of the X-Men cartoon at the same time as I was reading those Bunties. I didn't connect them in my mind at all. I didn't really think of the X-Men as like comics because it wasn't. It was a cartoon. But as a teenager, I began my online life. And when you're online, you know people from different countries. So I was on LiveJournal. I had friends in America. And the crossover with like the things that I liked and the things that they liked, comics just came up. And X-Men comics, X-Men stories are still happening. Like I would hear, it was around, I don't remember what year it was, but it will be obvious because people were talking about Gambit being left in Antarctica. Because Rogue had his memories all of a sudden for whatever reason. I haven't actually read those because I don't want to see Gambit get left in Antarctica, because watching the cartoon, that was like my big pairing. So I heard that it was still happening. I was like, okay, so the comics are like the real story. I need to find out. I need to, I'm a research oriented person, I suppose. So there was one comic shop in my town, and I found it. It was quite hard because it was down an alley round a corner. Then there was the creepy door with all the Emma Frost covers on. You had to go through that, to go up a staircase past all the Lady Death posters, to go round the corner past the glass case full of all the Vampirella statues. Then you go through another door, then you get the comics. So I did. And that was Genesis 2.
Wow. You literally took a journey to find
I
comics.
did. That is the strength of my determination.
It's interesting to hear from someone who's not from America and kind of how they found comics, because a lot of us, whenever we interview an American creator, or even our origin story, if you will, is always very similar. Like, oh, I went into the grocery store and they had X-Men number 245 and I bought it, or something like that. And I guess it's just, I don't know if it's more accessible, but it feels like we always start with a superhero book, Marco excluded, I guess. We always start with a superhero book, and it's always in a grocery store or, something like that.
Well, I mean, you're the primary market for the American comics. We're just an afterthought. And we have our own, like we have the magazine culture, and we have the Panini own distribution for Marvel in Europe, which includes here. So we get books called Essential X-Men, and it's not the same as the big phone book ones. It's a, I think, bi-weekly, possibly monthly publication that puts out like 3 issues of X-Men comics at once in one book with like a slightly harder cover. It's not like a book, it's still a comic, but it's just like bigger. So I guess they need harder covers so that it doesn't rip when you get it off the shelves, because they're shelved with the magazines rather than comics. There's like the adult hobbyist magazines and the remaining British comics like Commando in 2000 AD. And then these essentials. You can get Essential X-Men, Essential Deadpool and Wolverine. I think there used to be Essential Gambit and Wolverine for a while. There's Essential Spider-Man. So you don't get them in like order exactly. I don't think they just like pick which stories they want to offer, and if you know that they're there, you can go and find them, and if you don't, then you won't, because nothing in our like day-to-day culture tells us go and find comics, go and read comics. Like, it's very, very common. I don't know if this is the same in America, but in Britain it's very, very common. If you say to an adult something about comics, they'll say they still make those, because it's just absent. We just don't have a strong comics culture anymore, apart from in our niche, which is widespread, but it's just not public.
So, would you say that because there's not that like comics culture, you said that you went to like a comic book store in your town growing up. Are there still like comic shops around, or are they kind of like a dying breed?
Both. Yeah, there, because that shop that I used to go to is not there anymore. It closed in 2012, I think. No, earlier than that. Yeah, it just went. It was just a guy who was into it, and then it stopped being profitable, I guess, or he got older. I don't know, but it there's one in the town over from my current town, which seems to do okay. They have a games shop that split off from the comic shop, which I feel like possibly supports the comic shop. I wouldn't want to comment too closely on their business, because whatever it is, it's working for them, but comic shops are very definitely niche shops. They're less common than what are they called? The Warhammer shops, like Games Workshop or whatever it's called. Like, you're more likely to see one of those on a high street, or like just off the high street, than you are a comic shop. So there's, I guess, a subculture, but not a strong mainstream presence. Like, so every now and then someone will start a new shop in your town and you'll be like, great, but then it's so small or so specific or something, and it won't survive, or it will survive but it's not for you. It's just, it's not like, it's not really an industry level presence, I guess.
I think you do see a lot of that on some level in the States. Like you said, the games thing. I think you see a lot of that in shops here now, where there's like magic cards and figures and Funko Pops and all this other stuff that kind of supplements the comics business.
Yeah, Funko Pops will always be like the grounding presence.
So you told us a very detailed story of how you first got to your first comic shop, and you mentioned some of the busts that they had and the posters and things like that of, obviously women in comics that are scantily clad, these characters. Did the effort and that element of it deter you at all? Was that off-putting?
It was very off-putting, but it clearly did not deter me. It just made me feel bad because I wanted the comics. I wanted to be present in like the area, the scene, or whatever. But it was the toll. It like being framed in that context as a young woman. It was just yucky. It wasn't nice. I didn't like it, and it gave me myriad grudges, which I have since explored in my criticism at length. So, yeah. That's
something that we talk about a lot when we talk about the state of the industry, is the many different factors that go into becoming an active reader of comics. And I think everyone knows someone who likes superheroes. Like I think if you ask any person, I think most of the time they'll have an answer like, oh, I love the Hulk from when they were a kid, or even from now, with the movies and stuff. But when you ask someone, have you ever read a comic book, or, have you ever been to a shop? The answers start to dwindle off and get closer to no. And we talk about all the different factors that prevent people, especially women, younger girls, from entering the industry as fans. And one of the things we talk about is shop owners themselves and the things that they do or don't do to attract women into the stores. Mm-hmm. Did you feel, outside of the way that, you had all those posters and stuff, did you feel going into that store supported in any way, or did you feel like you were kind of ostracized or treated as the other?
I did not feel like it was a shop for me. Like nothing about the shop, the literal, like the layout, the displays, the products. I wasn't supposed to be, like, I was an anomaly being there. I knew from the journey in, and I just wanted the comics. But the owner himself was always very sweet to me. He did not, like, he wasn't creepy. He just arranged his shop in such a way that made me feel crept. And that was, in fact, my second shop was half comic shop, half pornography shop when I was in university. Yeah, the front half was comics, and then the back half was like, I think it was specifically vintage pornography. I don't know. There were a lot of like covers with nipples with stars on, but it was all completely visible. So you could stand like next to the new in rack, and if you looked that way, tits galore, and if you looked that way, well, probably the same, but they're colored purple. But
that's
again,
vintage porn.
That owner was lovely. He was always extremely respectful to me. He was a nice man. He would help me. He gave me I stopped in there on my way home from uni once, and I had too much stuff. I couldn't carry it, so he gave me a bin bag. Like, he didn't have to, but he did. Like, that doesn't sound especially kind, but in the circumstances it was. So it wasn't that I would say like they were fully innocent in gatekeeping terms, because they weren't, because of the way that they presented their stock and kept their environment. Like they were not environments inviting to a girl or a young woman, or at least me. I'm sure there are some girls who would love those circumstances, but I would probably guess that there's a smaller number than the opposite. But you know, I guess the point is they could have been worse and they weren't. So it's like I don't try very hard to like square the two, because it's just that's men. Sorry.
That's fine.
I think we all agree. So at some point you took your passion and you decided to fuse it with your creativity. How did that happen, and how did you parlay that into the career you have now?
When you say my creativity, what do you mean exactly?
So you edit comics, and I believe you've written as well, and you critique them. So I feel like that represents you as a creative person.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure whether you would count criticism as creative.
I do.
Would. Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, from that position, there's no difference to me, because criticism is a natural consequence of readership. And pro-creativity is a natural consequence of criticism, I think. If you read something and you think a thought about it, and then that thought makes you want to essentially fix the thought, then you've created. Like, for some people, that will just be the automatic, like the rollover from canon to shipping to fan fiction. For some people, it would be more extensive, like active criticism, and then from that springboard to making it different, like making something that is the same but different, or making a project. Like in editorial terms, it does also spring for me directly from criticism, because I want the opportunity to make the product not criticism proof, but I want my job to have already been done by the time it's solid, so that I don't have any personal regrets about what that solidity is. Because sometimes critical thoughts are just regretful. Like, I wish they'd done it this way so that I could say slightly more interesting things about it, or slightly less negative things about it. And if you're involved at an earlier level of the process than reading the finished article, then you're able to put those thoughts that would be criticism of the final project into the project earlier. And so the whole path runs differently, and you just get to experience a more personally satisfying version of that product.
I love that response. I never connected comics criticism or criticism of a creative work and editing in that way. That's really fascinating. So I guess, how did you get on that journey?
I think I just said, does anyone want me to edit their comic? And a couple of people did, so I did, and then it went well, and as it goes.
Okay.
It just struck me one day. I wish I could do it earlier. So I said, I wish I could do it earlier, and then I was able to. It was really very natural.
So now we get into the editing, and I have so many questions for you on this front.
Cool.
Especially in light of how you framed what you feel you are doing in that process. I think every creative is different, right? Every person has a way that they're approaching their work that is slightly different. And I would imagine, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of have to come into that process and mold yourself to the way that they work, but also apply the way you work. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So how does that process play itself out, and how careful do you kind of have to be to respect that person's vision, but also fix it, for lack of a better term?
I would not say that what I do has to be careful exactly. I see what you mean, and it's not that I disagree with that. It's just that being careful makes it sound too much like a chore. Like too much like a purposeful thing that one must do because it's the right thing to do, rather than something that is natural. And I think that respecting the creator's vision is the most obvious and natural way to work on that vision. I wouldn't especially know, like, I don't. I think, well, in critical discussion, you will often find people saying that criticizing a work for what it's not is pointless. And I suppose that it turns out that I agree with that, because working on something to try and make it something else, just, I don't see the point. It doesn't occur to me to do that, I think. When someone says, "This is what I want to do, can you help me?" Yes. Like, that is the joy and the fun and the point and the work. So it's never, I have never yet experienced the desire to derail someone else's creative journey. I have only experienced the pleasure of clearing the tracks. I'm working on something currently with, I guess I won't say who because I don't know if I should, but we're working on a graphic novel. And he hired me to workshop ideas with him. He wasn't sure which idea he wanted to go with for this project. And we talked about various different pitches and various different things. And in that case, the developing pitch has potentially had more of my direction in it than usual. But I still would not call that my pitch or my direction or my control, because as far as I'm aware, at least, I have still only worked on this project in the editorial role. Like, I haven't tried to, like, I don't have a vision of that project. I only have visions for the visions that he projects to me, which I think is the difference between co-writing and editing. The writer will always have the wheel for me, I think. And it is interesting because I do occasionally worry, because people are so easily able to say editorial interference, especially in comics. It's this mad fear that people have, like the editor is going to ruin it by making you do this. That is only a problem that will occur in the corporate publishing world, because there is nothing in it for me or any independent editor to project their own desires onto a project. There's no reward in that, because the writer will be miserable. You'll have to do more work than you're being paid for, and in the end, what do you get? Like, someone else's name on something. So there's no draw. That's probably not even fun. Like, how enjoyable can it be to make someone do something they don't want to do? That must be bad for everyone. So I really just, I've never so far found any danger in my desire for control of a project. It just hasn't happened. I wondered if it might, because I like to be in charge of things and I like to be creative and direct my own stories. But when I'm in the editing headspace, it just doesn't happen. It doesn't come up because that's not the work.
So on that note, something that you had said spurred a question in me where do you find it hard, I guess, to like when you're judging if you're going to work with someone, like how does that equation come up in your mind, right? Like if someone presents a story to you, do you look at editing as you could edit any book, like even if it was a book that doesn't necessarily speak to you or that like isn't to your sensibilities, or do you feel like you need to like find something in the work that you connect with before you feel like you can really like meaningfully be a part of that creative journey?
No, I haven't turned down any work. Well, no, that's not true. I was unable to take one project because I was a bit busy, and also because I knew someone else who might want to work on it. Excuse me, but no, a personal interest or a personal investment is nothing. It's not, because there's no challenge in cherry picking that way. I don't know what I would gain as a creative person, or as it wouldn't help me grow, or there would. I mean, if I worked that way, it might make me more inclined to want to take over the direction. Because if I said, right, I only want to work on romance comics, then I have a whole head full of romance comics that I'm ready to write. So maybe I would try and make them all fit my vision. But that's just an alternate reality where I'm a megalomaniac. No, whatever is brought to me, I'm interested to do, because that is someone who wants me to help them, and that is what I want to do. I think it would be cowardly, honestly, to say I don't want to work on that. Potentially, I guess there's the potential of something that I can't do. I haven't experienced it yet. A friend asked me to edit his short stories, and occasionally I have a little more trouble with that because I think he's very good at writing short stories, and I don't want to change a lot of what he's already written, which I'm not sure is a fault in me as an editor or a plus. I'm not sure if I'm expressing good enough judgment or the appropriate amount of judgment in that case. But that is not something that has arisen with comics, which is not to say that I don't think everyone who I've worked with is good at making comics, because I do. I think that I'm just more personally inclined to be transported by what is visually identical to the finished product. Like, prose is going to look like prose, but a comic script or thumbnails, they are not ready yet. So it is easier to imagine how they could be better when they are ready, or more, not better. Better is the wrong word, because that makes it sound like I am the arrogant all-sayer. That will make people feel that I'm just coming to tell them they're not good enough. And that is not the case. It's a matter of finding what is in the way of your best reception.
Right.
And in clearly unfinished work that is, it's invited by the format.
I really liked the way that you describe it on your website. I like, you have the section, it's yes, I will edit your comic. And it says that an editor is your first reviewer and no one will read what they thought. And I thought that was like an interesting perspective on it, of the idea that like, it's not, like you said, it's not about you trying to get in there and tell them what to do. It's like, well, I'm going to read the work and tell you what I got out of it. And like, is that what you're trying to communicate? Like, are your characters coming across the way you want them
Exactly.
to? Is the voice of the characters consistent? Like those sorts of things that I think, I know from, like reading friends' work and stuff like that. I feel like especially when you're a newer creator, it's really easy to get lost in the weeds with that sort of stuff because you're
Yeah.
so in the work for so long, you know?
Yeah, often a creative person who is enamored of their own work, which is hopefully all creative people, they know what it looks like in their mind. And so they can't see what's on the page because they're seeing through the vision that they have. But I don't have the vision that's in their mind. I only see what's on the paper. And often, whether this is something that I have built through criticism or through excessive readership, or whether it's something that I have a natural inclination towards, I can often get the gist of what they're meaning to get on the paper, but also see what is not yet there. And the difference, like bringing those two into focus with each other, bringing them in line, that's the work. Finding what it looks like they have missed out or put too much of, checking with them if that is the case, and then seeing what they do next, having been given that that question. It's all about questions. Editing, at least creative editing, is all about just asking the questions.
So we have people who listen to the podcast who, you know, are aspiring creators at varying levels in terms of how far they've gotten along the process. Some of us even here are also writers. Cale's published. What is one of the biggest things? I want to say pitfalls. Maybe you'll disagree with that phrase, but one of the biggest pitfalls, I guess, that you see creators fall into, or one of the consistent things that you find you have to come in and say, hey, is this what you intended? Or, you know, things like that. Something that someone can think about before they even call you. Not, I mean, that might put you out of business, but, you know.
It's not, I'm not sure that there's one thing that everyone does, but often I find myself asking about depth of character. And luckily this won't put me out of business because I have a workbook you can buy.
Perfect.
Which is based around the idea of developing your sense of your characters far enough that once, like far enough within your mind and on paper, but not on the paper, that once you get to putting the actual story together, you have enough information about exactly what they're like, who they are, what they it's hard to express what is needed in the expression of a character. And I think that is the problem, because people miss it. Like, they have an idea in their mind of someone who feels tangible to them, but they're not quite sure how to make that tangibility translate, because our imaginations are fueled not only by comics, but very much by both cinema and real life. And cinema and real life have an array of means of expressing character that are not accessible to the comic book creator. Like, the example that is perhaps most useful is the way that Iron Man was nobody before the movie. Like, he was Iron Man, but who cares? No one. Like, he wasn't a big deal. He was just, oh yeah, Marvel's got other superheroes too. Like, they're called the Avengers. Like, who cares? Are they? It's just a guy. It doesn't matter. But when it's Robert Downey Jr., he's breathing. He's mobile. He's more tangible than whatever sense of Tony Stark you can get from a bunch of different creators over the years. So he becomes a sensation because there are more opportunities and more immediate opportunities to express character and life, just like the idea of someone real. Because Robert Downey Jr. is a real man. Like, you can't deny that Iron Man is now a real character. Whereas if he's just a drawing, he has to be an interesting drawing and a drawing with life and personality, and you can get tone of voice onto a page through choice of words, dialogue, lettering, but you can't actually get literal tone of voice onto a page. You have to use other methods, and sometimes those methods are not methods of tone of voice, they're just methods of like different ways to trick the reader into thinking this guy really exists. So because you can't actually have him go like, or whatever, like whatever fucking Joss Whedon goofy bullshit that they put in all of these movies, you can't get that onto a page. You have to do it a different way. You have to use a different method of getting to the back of someone's mind in terms of how they experience this cipher as a friend. And so that has to come through in the way that they talk about things and the way that their minimal dialogue can allude to other matters that are not literally on the page, so that you can, without feeling exposited upon, you can know that they have had other experiences and been in other places and known other people and experienced other emotions and so on. And you can't get that kind of inference down if you don't have enough data in your own mind to draw on, because you won't know how they might describe this particular thing in comparison with something else if you don't know the other things in their lives for them to compare with. I think possibly the biggest problem that many young writers, and I mean young in terms of writing career, not in terms of age, is that they don't do enough homework, which sounds really gross, but you have to workshop way before you start writing. And that doesn't just mean world building, and it doesn't just mean plotting. You have to think about the context, the specific context of every single character in terms of the story and in terms of not the story. Because if you concentrate only on what you can show in the story, then you won't know what you can show in the story that implies things out of the story that will be helpful. Is that clear? Because I can get a little tangled up in this sometimes.
Astonishingly.
Yeah. I think that's super interesting. And to Sean's point, for all of the would-be creators, I think that's very, very valuable advice.
Good.
Yeah, this is why we wanted to have you on.
So I did manage to get the workbook, and I was definitely reading through it. I think the best part is sort of the examples that you lay out, like the questions that you pose for characters or for the writers themselves, and even artists to sort of be asking themselves. There's an entire section about like reflection, and I think where does the ideation for that process sort of come from? It's sort of I guess a little more easier to kind of go through the motions of it, but putting pen to paper and actually thinking about it and thinking about how you should be approaching a sort of situation. Where does that sort of come from for you? Like, do you sort of just sit down and take the approach? Do you mull it over? Like, how does the actual process of the editing come for you?
The process of the editing. Well, once I get whatever the creator or creators have got for me, which can be anything, because I would rather not punish people. If they've come to a point where they feel they need editorial input, then I think that it's appropriate for me to respond with editorial input. So it might be a script, or it might be an outline, or it might be thumbnails with approximate dialogue or whatever. It simply comes from reading what is there and recognizing my reactionary questions. Like, what do I think isn't there, or what am I surprised isn't there, or what do I think this might be implying could happen later, or am I fully engaged all the way through this page, or am I distracted by something? It's all immediate response, because I think that I try to read as a reader, because readers are who creative writing is for. And I think that separating readership from editorial reading is, well, it's just silly, because what is it then if it's editing for nothing? It's nothing. So I read what there is as if I were the end reader, and then I think what is between me in this experiential moment now and me as a happy and satisfied reader, and how can I express that difference through questions that will allow the creator to fill that gap without me like making them. Because if I'm just telling people what to do, then everyone is bored. Occasionally I suggest specific dialogue changes or approximate dialogue changes, but I always make sure to preface that with something like yada yada, so they can either go with what I'm saying or they can pick something better. But yeah, it's all about, what do I want? Like, if I'm the reader, what do I want? And then I try and make sure that the opportunity to deliver that is there for the creator.
So I'm really interested in how your role as an editor enhances you as a writer, as a writer of comics as well, because I would imagine that, pouring through other people's scripts and finding the things that can be enhanced helps you too on some level. Would you say that's true?
I don't know. I never think about it in the moment, because that seems a little rude. I look at my own work with my same reader eyes as I look at other people's. I don't make direct comparisons. But I presume that as I grow and improve as an editor, I will be able to grow and improve as a redrafter. I wouldn't trust myself to be the editor of my own work, because that is foolishness. You end up with nonsense. I don't know. I don't know that. I don't think that I pay a student's attention to my editorial material. I think that if I learn from it as a writer, it's unconscious or subconscious or whichever. I assume there must be some positive alchemy, but I have not directly observed it.
Okay, interesting. So we talked earlier about how you are multifaceted, and we talked about the editor element of you. I am really intrigued by your criticism and your critique. So you are a writer for Women Write About Comics, and you've got a variety of different types of work on there. You review comics, which I was intrigued by, but there's also more in-depth things that you have to say, and you have various podcast appearances as well, which I think can also be considered a part of that criticism as well, if that's what you're doing on the podcast. What are the things that you are passionate about talking about as it relates to this industry?
I don't know. I don't have a conscious manifesto. I just do whatever I want. And often that goes in patterns, I think. I like, because I don't think of it as, I guess, a body of work in that sense from the inside. I can observe patterns like as imagining from the outside, like probably it would be split 3 ways, maybe 4, maybe 5. I do a lot of writing about sexual presentation, or the presentation of sexuality on the page, which often is like a big circular Venn diagram with presentation of women, femininity, etc. Just because of how comics tends to be full of pervs. I seem to have been doing a fair bit of formalism. I don't really enjoy that word, but I like looking at just how a page works, whether that's how many panels or where the lettering is. I love lettering. There's nothing better than a well-lettered conversation. That is really, a lot of people will say the pinnacle of comics is like a great splash page or whatever, but I think it's a well-lettered conversation where the bubbles and the figures are juxtaposed just so precisely that you can feel everything about the whole, like the essence of being in that conversation. I don't know, it's hard because I don't have like a big book of all my stuff in front of me, and I tend to forget what I've done as soon as I've done it. What would you say? If you don't know, that's fine. But if you have an idea of what you thought I might have answered, I would like to hear that.
Well, an underrepresented part of the conversation in comics as it relates to the criticism of comics, and something that I've observed in your work, is the conversation about the way, I guess, overall, how comics represent women. And that is not a thing for me that I have confronted, in the sense that, CBR, right, does not have articles about that. Newsarama does not have articles about that. And you are one of the only, and this could be my responsibility, this could be my fault, but you're one of the only people who I've ever seen really discussing these things. And I figured that you might say that that was a tenet of, your critical eye as it relates to the industry.
Yeah, I would agree. I wouldn't agree that I'm the only one. I think a big, like the easiest example off the top of my head would be Sarah Century at Sci-Fi. I don't remember. I just click the links. I don't see where they're going. But she does a lot of retrospectives of women, especially in Marvel. Those are the ones I read anyway, because Marvel is my area, or was. Yeah, I mean, I exist as a woman, so my readership of comics that has to, like, I can't escape that. And I mean, I suppose I could if I tried, but then I would be miserable and repressed. So it strikes me as necessary for a peaceful existence to, or at least for the most peaceful existence possible, to reflect upon the reflections that you are offered in order that you can compare them with your actuality. Because if you don't know where you stand in regards to where everybody else stands, or where you stand in regards to how you perceive your standpoint to be, because sometimes you don't realize until you actually look directly at what you're thinking. You don't know what you're thinking, and you're wrong about what you're thinking, and that leads you down a whole other path. I think if I was someone else, I would approach comics and criticism through whatever lens that would be, because I don't really know any other way to exist than directly as myself. And I don't know what I would gain from a perspective that is studiously apart from me. I think that would prevent me from, like, a fully integrated existence, which sounds cosmic, but comics.
Okay. So with that lens, we talked earlier about the way that, you know, your first introduction to going to a store was a little bit off-putting, was maybe a lot off-putting. And you mentioned that you have sort of, I think what you said was that you aired out your grievances through your work.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Well, I suppose the first experience I had of comics criticism was David Brothers at Fourth Letter, and his method was absolutely foundational for me. Like, I don't think I've really deviated from his example. He did the same. He took his position as a black man in America reading these comics that are not made for black men, that they are made for Americans and American men. And he put that perspective, like that was the lens that you entered when you went to that website, or at least to his posts there. And that made it so interesting to me and so valuable, because I was actually learning something. I was actually getting a perspective that I couldn't intuit on my own, or that I hadn't intuited on my own. And because I found that something that, like, that changed me as a person, essentially. Like, it made more of me. So doing that, offering that same opportunity to other people by just being totally plain about what bothers me and what gives me thoughts and what I am required to put up with in order to be a reader of these comics. It seemed the only way to fly. And once I began, it proved that it was, because it made me feel better, because I didn't have it just stuck in me anymore, feeling all disgusting. When you squeeze a spot, you feel better. Like, you have to get the pus out. So I just say, this is how this aggressive use of aggressively spherical breasts on so many of these comics that were surrounding me at this time and remain physically in this world make me feel about the product and how it affects how the implicit message of the visuals. Like comics, everybody will say it's words and pictures together. You can't separate them. They're one thing. So if we all agree the pictures are saying something, then if the pictures are often choosing to draw this round boob, then that is saying something. And what it's saying to me is blah, blah, blah. So putting that blah, blah on someone else's screen seems very obviously valuable, because if no one says what it means, then we all just have to sit around wondering. And what's the point of that? Then we get nothing done. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I hope that I am.
Definitely.
You are. And first of all, David Brothers is awesome. Beyond that, it is very easy for me to understand what you're saying as a Black person who reads comics.
Yeah.
Because it's not the same experience, I guess, but it's a similar experience of, I don't want to speak for you, but for me, some level of alienation.
Yeah.
And that, with an increasingly growing diverse population and a lot of, mixing, for lack of a better term, there are more people into things that aren't for them than ever.
Yeah.
And that is going to require people who are not the target audience to say, hey, this is how this makes me feel. And that's why we need you, and that's why we need people like you, because it not only gives a voice to those who are the alienated, but it also says to the people who are unintentionally or intentionally doing the alienating, hey, this is what's happening. Reflect on this. How does this make you feel? That this is how I feel. And that I love about the top-down criticism that you do offer, because it's one thing to pick up X-Men number 300 and say, well, Jean Grey's boobs on this page are so big that it makes me feel whatever. It's another to say, why is this systemic?
Yeah.
Why is this always what it is? And that's what we need. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for thanking me. It's also, I think, the fact that I get to do it online on a website that we collectively, the contributors, own, is additionally powerful, because you will, throughout the history of letters pages, find letters from girls saying, excuse me, what are you doing? This is how I feel about this. And you'll often find replies being like, be quiet, darling. And so people have always been saying how things not for them, but which they are expected to buy, because these letters will always express the positivity of this person having bought this product. Like, it is right for you to buy it. It is good for you to buy it. This is a buyable thing. You should have it. You're just wrong for experiencing it wrong. There have always been people saying, no, you're making it wrong for me to experience, and this upsets me. But they had to say it ephemerally. They had to say it in the letters page of that comic. They had to say it in a fanzine that however many people bought and then put in a box or burnt, or whatever people used to do with paper zines. We're allowed to last now in a way that makes the work even more valuable. Like, because we claim posterity and are able to claim posterity, someone can, like, in however many years' time, if some person finds like a thumbnail on Comic Vine or whatever that will be in the future of the Batgirl cover with the Joker pointing at her vagina, and they're like, this makes me feel weird. I wonder what people said about this. They will, if internet archiving remains solid, fingers crossed, they will be able to find out what we said very easily, and they will feel reinforced and validated and present, more present both in their time and in ours, because they'll know that there were people there to support their fellow feeling, and that they're not the only one, or that they're not reading it wrong, or that their perspective and readership is valid in its actual form, not in its required purchased form.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I guess the cap off for me in this conversation is, how do you evaluate the progress, I guess, of the industry? If you're looking at where we are now from when you started.
I don't. I just don't. Because I think it would upset me. So I just continue to have confidence in my self, which, I mean, I don't feel I have to disavow anything that I've said. I might choose to disavow certain things or update certain ideas. I don't know, but it's possible. But I don't feel that progress has happened to the degree that anything that I have said is no longer relevant. And I also don't feel that if it did, I would be lessened as someone who had to say that at the time. And I feel just less dismayed in myself, having produced the criticism that I have, no matter what the result or not even the result, like no matter what the development in the industry itself has been. I don't have the power to change comics because it's not my job. I don't have the role. I don't have the access. I just don't have the ability. All I can change is my satisfaction with where I am. And the way that I do that is through producing this criticism. And so asking my criticism to answer for other people's decisions and actions and positions would be, I think, putting a curse on myself, because it would be asking something that I can't provide.
Fair enough. And I think this conversation has been very enlightening, but also very intense. And I want to ask you some fun questions.
Okay.
So first of all, what books are you reading now? What do you read for your own enjoyment?
Don't ask me that. Right now, nothing. No, that's not true. Right now, I'm reading 2000 AD in its first couple of years and Star-Lord, but at the moment, I kind of hate them. So that's not really fun. I don't know.
Do you watch things? Do you listen to things that, we'll take any old thing.
Any old thing, okay. I love The Good Witch on Netflix. That's my favorite show. Yes, it's brilliant because it's so weird. It's called The Good Witch, and it's about a witch, but she never does any magic. There's no special effects or anything. She just says wise things and then coincidences happen. There are never any villains, and there's never really any enmity or fights or anything. It's just dramatic problems might arise, and then they get fixed through a lady making a cake and then saying something with a winky tone of voice, and then a coincidence happens. It's brilliant. They've had like 5 or 6 seasons. I think it's a Hallmark Channel thing. I love it.
Right. Okay.
It's just about these ladies who have businesses and get in everyone's business and fix things, and that's the whole thing. It's so peaceful. Oh, and the mayor of the town is played by the lady who used to be the Jean Grey voice in the animated show. She's like this bustling chicken-like mayor who originally was kind of the villain, but it used to be these TV movies that were about this woman coming to her ancestral town after being fostered and being a witch, but you can't say it, it's secret, and falling in love with this policeman who was played by the Gambit voice.
Wow.
And then they changed it to a big TV show, and to do that, they killed him. Because in the movies, they'd gotten together and got married and had a child. And then they changed it to television. They're like, how can we make this romance work? We're going to kill that guy and give her a new one. Which is just, I love that. It's
Classic
so
Hallmark.
like cutthroat, but it's Hallmark. So she used to be like the mayor who's kind of the villain, but now she's just the mayor who everyone loves, even though she's bossy and bustling. It's just so peaceful.
I like you're leaning back and just like bathed, and you're like, it's so peaceful.
Yeah, I truly, truly love it.
Who is your favorite member of the X-Men?
Rogue.
Okay.
Nice.
Solid choice.
For me, it's Jean Grey.
I had a question I really wanted to ask you because both Sean and Phil are big fans of wrestling, and on your site I saw that you had curated a zine about wrestlers' haircuts, and I just really briefly wanted to talk about that. It's called The Big Chop.
Sure.
It's free. You can check it out. I was looking at it a little bit earlier today. What is your relationship to wrestling?
Well, okay. In 2011, my partner, for some reason, decided to revisit this childhood love of wrestling. Oh no, I know why. It was because the Attitude Era podcast. He was listening to all of those, and then going back and looking at the matches, and I was just also there, so I looked at it, and then I saw it, and I was like, okay, I'll watch this because it's there. I liked the China and Eddie thing. That was some good romantic drama.
Yeah.
So just for a while, we just watched some wrestling, and then there was too much, so we stopped. But then once you know about it, you can't help know about it. So, like I said, my reading brain, my viewing brain is the same as my editorial brain. So once I know about a thing, I can't help but have these opinions and ideas, and so then I have to do something. So I did that.
What was it like specifically about wrestlers' haircuts that like stood out to you? I just thought that was such an interesting idea.
Everybody knows wrestlers have fucking horrible hair. And that was enough, really. I can't remember if there was something specific. I guess it was just because, presumably because I come quite heavily from superhero narrative as a viewer, a change in costume is significant. And in wrestling, a change in hair is a change in costume because it changes the silhouette. And it often comes with change of gimmick or a change of whatever. And the narrative potential of that change. Like, stories in wrestling suck. Sometimes they're okay, but mostly they're just annoying because they're endlessly serial and they don't expect you to actually remember and they don't really make sense. That's why I had to stop. I can't deal with endlessly continuous narrative. It does my head in. But even when they're bad, you're still supposed to understand something. You're supposed to get some impression. Like the nature of gimmicks is give the viewer just enough that they can fill in the blanks and have a lot of like emotional response to that. And changing the hair is like, it's like an unconscious acknowledgement of what is classed as feminine understanding. Because it can be called a cliche when a girl cuts her hair after a breakup, but that is not different to a wrestler changing their hair in order to change the response they get from the audience. And so, like I said, with comics, like I can only experience things from my exact position. So when I experience wrestling, I experience it as hair stuff, costume stuff, gimmick stuff, relationship stuff. Like, it's there, and they like to pretend that it's not, but it is. So I think that discussing it as what it is valuable and satisfying.
I thought you were going to say I come from a long line of barbers and haircutsmen, and then you were going to continue, you know.
No, I don't. I don't think I have any barbers in my ancestry at all.
So here's the pitch. A podcast about the intersection between wrestling and specifically superhero comics and the people who love them.
There must be like 6 of those already.
All right. Well, I want to be the 7th. So if you want to be a guest, you let me know. We'll talk. Our people will reach out. All right. So I feel like we could do this all day. I'm sure you have other things to do than sit and talk to the 5 of us weirdos. We've gone an hour. Thank you so much, Claire, for joining us. You've added so much to my knowledge, not only of what it takes to be an editor, or at least what it takes for you to be an editor, because I'm sure everyone has a different way of doing it. But it's enlightening anyways. And why criticism in comics is so important. And I hope that you guys listening got something out of it. Maybe you were taking notes. But again, Claire, thank you for offering your knowledge to us. And we appreciate it.
Well, thank you for asking for it. That's nice in itself.
Yeah, this is a completely fascinating conversation. We'd love to have you on again sometime to talk more.
That'd be great.
Before you go, can you let the people know where they can find you on the internet and, you know, where they can get the workbook and things like that?
Always on Twitter at IllusClaire, ILLUSCLAIRE. The workbook is my pinned tweet, so that's easy. Or you can go to clairenapier.com, which is the old website, but yeah, you can get to either from either. So
awesome. Thank you so much again, and hopefully we'll have you back on the podcast sometime soon.
Thank you.
All right. So that was an awesome conversation we just had with Claire. And if you guys want her website, I encourage you to go check it out. There's a lot of cool stuff there if you want to understand more of where she was coming from. But we've got a lot more show to do and not a lot of time to do it. So we're going to jump straight into the Pals Pulls. And we're going to start with Cale, who chose Ultraman number 2.
Yeah, so I wasn't around when the Rise of Ultraman number 1 came out, but this is the sort of Marvel refresh of Ultraman that Kyle Higgins is doing. He did the first big set of arcs with the Power Rangers, and I don't know. Now he scored big. And Subaru is trying to bring Ultraman to America, and the world is good. Believe it or not, the world is good.
has there been much Ultraman the last 10 years? Really, I feel like he's a
So
product of the past.
hard no. In the same way that like Kamen Rider has sort of grown, Ultraman has done it sort of along the same parallel to it. But Subaraya, the company that makes Ultraman in Japan, has been in this really long court case with, I believe, China.
What?
Yeah, because there's a company stealing the IP and using Ultraman and like, yeah, it's wild.
That's insane.
You know, it would be very like 2020 for there to be like a military conflict over an IP.
Oh yeah, but Subaraya won in like 2019 or something, 2018 maybe, and they have just been putting Ultraman everywhere. You can see the most recent series in English on YouTube. It's great.
Wow.
I'm having a great time.
Yeah, it must really appeal to you.
Yeah.
Cool. I was actually interested in Ultraman. I wanted to buy this issue, but I just didn't get around to it. Or the first one, I should say. But
the first one's very slow. It's kind of a slow burn. You don't actually see Ultraman, but because it's a 5-issue series, I think they're making it, an event itself. You know, it's a very slow spy sort of thing.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll try to get around to that. And then you also chose Chainsaw Man number 87 and 88.
Hell yeah, dude.
Now, listen, if you're in the Discord, and if you're not, you should be. If you're in the Weeb channel, if you're not, you should be. I have been raving about Chainsaw Man for like 3 weeks, which is completely untrue. It's only been like 3 days.
Yeah.
But I blew through Chainsaw Man in 3 days. I caught up on 85 chapters.
What?
I cannot get enough.
That's like actually 85 issues.
Two thoughts.
Yeah, it would be.
Chainsaw Man sounds like a Mega Man villain.
Yes.
And
He
two,
looks like what a badass Mega Man villain would look like. Yeah.
two,
Legitimately.
I didn't know we had a weed channel.
Yeah, that's because
Yeah,
you don't
the
ever
Wii channel.
go on the Discord.
Come on, baby. You're there. We're talking about Dragon Ball. Don't ignore me like that.
Didn't say weeb.
Oh,
yeah,
channel.
yeah, he did say a weed channel. Yeah.
Oh, he did?
We don't. Well, Phil said it. I don't know if Cale said it.
I said weeb.
I said weed.
Anyway, shut up. Chainsaw Man
420th
is like,
channel.
It's like, so the premise is basically MIB, Men in Black, meets hell and demons, right?
What?
And then put that on like an intravenous system and jack it up with Mountain Dew and Four Loko, and that is Chainsaw Man. Oh, Men in Black and Junji Ito. That's what I meant.
Okay.
What? Maybe this should be in the weed
yeah.
channel.
That's the hook. It's tremendous. There is nothing is sacred. Characters you don't think are gonna go, they go like that, and it is nothing. It's tremendous. 87 comes out tomorrow, which is Sunday as we're recording, and then 88 comes out next Sunday. So jump on it.
It's kind of like reminiscent of Ash from the Evil Dead, right? I'm looking at art from it now.
I guess kind of,
Yeah, a little.
in that there's a chainsaw on a
That's
guy's hand. Yeah.
Definitely the main part.
But the chainsaw is on Chainsaw Man's head.
What is going
And
on?
it's in his,
Yeah,
and it's in his
dude.
arms, and it's in
Yeah,
his
dude.
legs.
It's fucking wild.
That's absolutely
You gotta read Chainsaw Man.
Well,
Okay.
I won't be, but I appreciate the hard sell. I hope everyone reads Chainsaw Man. So Marco chose Legend of the Swamp Thing Halloween Spectacular.
Spooky.
Woo!
Obviously, more Swamp
That's
Thing
the
is
whole review.
always. That's the whole review. More Swamp Thing is obviously better. All things that are swampy are good, and if it's a Halloween spectacular, it has to be. It's good. I'm getting it. It's a sort of anthology kind of thing where there's a bunch of different creators on it, various writers, various artists. I like seeing artist showcase like that where you get to sort of take and mold the character differently, especially in these like shorts. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This is a pickup for me, and if you enjoyed our Swamp Thing book club, a pickup for you.
That was a really good book club.
Cool.
Some things I
Yeah.
know, baby.
The last Swamp Thing special that we got was the Christmas one, I think, or
Tom King?
the winter one, the winter special.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, with a story in it by Tom. Yeah, and we didn't love it, but or at least I don't think we loved it.
It was mixed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm always excited for more Swamp Thing, believe it or not. So
I do want to call out some of the artists. So Emma Rios, who I know her from some image books that she's done. She was like Arc House is really, really good. Christian Ward, I would say. Mike Perkins. Then on the writing end, Tom King, Vita Ayala, Philip Kennedy Johnson, who Sean, we were talking about Last God, DC Black Label book. Ram V, who has a book coming out soon, that jazz book that I've been really interested about.
yeah,
Cullen Bunn. Cullen Bunn's a good boy. And Julian Little, I'm not familiar with, but it's sort of the team on it. It's a good mix.
you also chose Spy Island #2.
Spyland?
Spyland, baby. So if you're on the Discord as well, I believe we had a few of us had a conversation about Spy Island. It's an interesting book about a spy on an island in the Bermuda Triangle where it's sort of there's an intersection of dimensions, and there's like monsters that also appear there, and they sort of all interact. Everybody on the island is some sort of spy or other, and this follows Nora Freed, who is our main point of view character. She's just kind of doing her thing on the island. There's the murder of somebody that she was supposed to have assassinated, and now she's trying to figure it all out. It's a good mystery. It's fun. The art's really, really tight. The writer is Chelsea Kane, artist Elise McCall, and colorist Rachel Rosenberg. So Chelsea Kane did Man Eaters, I think to mixed reviews depending on who sort of read it. But I mean, otherwise, yeah. I mean, this is starting out to be a pretty good and fun series.
Awesome. Now I chose Batman 100. This is obviously a milestone. Although Batman has had like 700s, 800s, something like that.
10, like canonically, right? Like.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
because
we did get Batman 1000.
Or Detective Comics 1000.
Detective Comics 1000.
Yeah.
So like, okay, yeah. So there's probably like 1800s, right? Because that's 1,000, and then Batman. Whatever. The point is, it's a milestone. Okay. And I am as far behind on Batman as I've been ever since I started reading books, just because of the lack of me going to the shop. But I just went and I spent $200.
Wow.
Almost as much as Marco on Onslaught, which you should check out last week's
Holy
episode.
shit.
Look at that.
But I barely made a dent, guys, in how far behind I am. Like,
Wow.
I believe that.
it's
I believe that.
It's rough. So anyway, I did buy all the Batman that I missed out on, so I will be catching up with that, and I'm excited for issue 100. James Tynion, by all accounts, has been killing it, so I look forward to what he has to say in this 100th issue.
So assuming you got a mix of like different of Marvel, DC, and Image books.
No, that's all Batman.
What is that, like 50 books?
No, because some of the books are like really expensive, you know.
Okay.
There were books that week that had come out that were like $8. Like X of Swords Creation was, I think, $7.
Okay.
So like, varying prices. But yeah.
Dude,
Pick up any graphic novels, hardcover stuff. Okay.
I was gonna say
Just
I'm sorry.
literally floppies. Literally just
Damn,
just
dude.
floppies. Yeah.
I'm just like imagining you leaving Midtown and like having to fucking trek back across the city with just like a cartoonishly large stack of books, you know? Like,
I mean,
You want back for that, bro?
My man brought a little red wagon to drag it all back.
Nah, it's a shopping cart. That's what you bring in the city.
Yeah.
Word. Yeah. And then Pete and I, but I'm sure we all share the sentiment of Marauders 13, Wolverine 6, and X-Force 13 because of the obvious relationship with X of Swords. These are the next 3 chapters in that story. We will be reviewing X-Force number 4, or X Factor rather, number 4 in our main topic a little later on, as well as 3 Jokers number 2. And you guys will hear how we feel about the way that X of Swords is progressing. There's no reason for us to talk about it in this spot. We do have a question from a listener, making that the
random question of the week.
I was hoping this one wasn't random.
Well, I'm just gonna read it because I forgot to put it in the notes. This comes from Spring Heel Rick, aka my friend Harris, who says, after reading Juggernaut number 1, I have a random question. What character you think should have a title to explore / expand its history that has not done so already? Now, first of all, thank you for the question. Second of all, that is a super hard question to answer because I feel like most characters have their origin story told. In some type of mini or whatever ongoing.
Yeah.
That being said, does anyone have an answer that pops out for them?
I had an answer, but it's like kind of me being a dick and not super answering the question. I don't want a solo book about a character to go backwards. I really, really want a book about Nightcrawler going forward with the whole building the mutant religion thing. Like,
Yeah,
I want
bro.
that story so bad, like, since they set it up in the giant size. And a series that is like a Marauders style series where maybe it's like a team book, but Kurt's really the main character is like something I'm really hungry for right now, and I really want to see come to fruition.
It's kind of surprising they didn't put Nightcrawler on the Marauders roster, considering his swashbuckling pirate history.
Yeah, but I mean, he's a member of the council.
Yeah, who gives a shit? I don't think he would have any
Well,
issue
so
taking
is-
orders from Cape Pride.
Right.
No, I mean,
So
I think he
Pride-
has to be there though to like run the island.
Well, Kate Pride is one. She's the
Yeah.
Red Queen.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, okay. I rescind. You're right. Where's Nightcrawler?
It also wasn't.
Put him on the fucking boat.
Put him on a boat.
It also wasn't giant size. It was like X-Men number 9 or some shit.
Oh yeah, I think that's true.
Really?
Because they went to the old X mansion in Westchester
That's right.
in the giant size.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it's
must
kind
be
of a
crossing
nothing.
I must be crossing streams. I was thinking that it was at
Yeah,
the
you
end.
definitely are. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I know what you were thinking.
All right.
No, please
Well,
talk shit some more, my man.
thanks for correcting me, you grouchy old fuck.
You're welcome.
That's why no one likes to read comics.
Well, so my thought I always come back to is I really like when creators take smaller C-list, D-list characters and try to do something really interesting with them. Obviously, historically, we always come back to things like Grant's Animal Man and Doom Patrol and even like Sandman or something. I don't know.
Like Vision,
Well,
kind of.
Mr.
Sure.
Miracle, yeah.
Mr. Miracle, Vision, etc. So for me, it's always got to be. Whenever I think of something like this, it's got to be like a smaller character, and I think something that would be kind of fun would be like Rocket Red from JLI, who was like a in 80s DC, the Soviet
It's a
Union.
hell of a pull.
Yeah, 80s DC had like the Soviet Union have like a bunch of basically soldiers in Iron Man suits, if you will, like keeping patrol of the borders and stuff. I think it'd be really fun if we did something with that, and you could make it a period piece or something, or you can make it like now, even like 30 years after the Soviet Union fell, like like an old Rocket Red soldier or something. And you could really do something with like the dissolution of the Soviet Union in the last 30 years and how that's affected like the the Iron Curtain states and stuff like that. I don't know. There's something fun there. Maybe not fun actually, but it's something good there.
There's something depressing and interesting there.
Yeah.
Give me an iBoy series and I'll be happy.
You're all about iBoy this month, man.
This month, bro, since the beginning of X-Men. iBoy's just a good boy.
Beginning of X-Men.
Since
My man
X-Men
went-
number 1.
If my man can go back in time to 1962, 1963 and just be like, Stan, I need you to make this character canonical in X-Men number 1.
Speaking of a missing character, Stan, where the fuck is iBoy?
X-Men didn't start for Marco till iBoy showed up.
Yep, that's it. That's when I was on board.
X-Men didn't start for Marco until House of X number 1.
No, that's not true.
I
That's not
know.
true.
Holy shit.
It was when
guys.
iBoy started. That's at least X-Men-ish. House of Powers too.
Well, I know if Tyler from the Long Box was here, he would bring up who I also would like to see, which is a Glob Herman.
I really was expecting you to say that, and then you just went to the deep Soviet Union DC pull, so.
Glob Herman ongoing. I think that's something that could be a lot of fun.
Does discussion get applied to like characters whose maybe origins might be revamped? Because I do like when writers do that versus sort of pull and explore an origin story. Like one of the ones that I always think probably needs a revamp is The Spirit. That it's kind of like cheesy, very golden age, but I think it's if you put it into like a more modern context, I think it would work really, really well.
Interesting. Cale, did you answer?
No, mine would actually be a mix of what Marco just said and Phil's answer. I would love to see a mini horror ongoing of Ragman.
Oh, great choice.
That's good.
Great choice.
Old magic character that he's made of the souls of the damned or something.
Yeah.
He's like I believe he's like the Jewish definition of a golem.
Yeah, that's to his rags or whatever.
Yeah.
He was on the Shadow Pack team. That was really
Yeah.
good. It was like kind of a precursor to Justice League Dark or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And on Justice League Dark, I think.
Was he?
Yeah, not the new one, but the one in the New 52 stuff for a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember liking Ragman.
Yeah.
He was in that, and then he had some appearances in David Hines' Detective Comics, I think.
That's right.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised considering our the 5 of us interest in this. No one said Detective Chimp.
I called him out for
What?
something recently about getting his own series.
Yeah, what would you need to explore? He's Detective Chimp.
I don't want his
He's incredible.
origin. That's the thing. I want to go forward. What's up with what's he doing now?
So for me, for whatever reason, I've always been fascinated by Galactus.
Nice.
And I feel like he could really use a series like this, and I've always fantasized rather about what that would look like. But I think that the idea of a character who is essentially always hungry and has this cosmic mission that is not his will necessarily, I think there's a lot of cool stuff you could explore with that, especially if you get like a really sick artist. Because I think Galactus can be shown like he doesn't. So I forget who it was, but someone in our Discord said that Galactus is kind of goofy looking, and that's fair. But I always feel like I never thought Galactus looked goofy. I always thought Galactus looked really imposing, and I thought he was legit. So I don't know. I guess I get it, but I feel like a really great artist can make Galactus look awesome and somewhat ambiguous in some ways, and just generally sick. Like I'm thinking about Silver Surfer Black.
Oh, yeah.
That book was so fucking good. Yeah, can you imagine a Galactus book in that style? That would be sick.
Well, I guess it's just spoilers, but he kind of appears in it as like this
Right.
centralized like egg figure. It's really interesting.
You know what? There's something to be said too. He is a little goofy looking, but like when done correctly, he is both a little goofy looking and imposing, and I think that's a nice kind of balance to strike.
It's
Because
charming.
when you try to make something too edgy to be imposing, like that's been done to death the last 20 years. So
Sure.
there's something real classic about
Fuck,
Galactus.
Longer than 20 years, like arguably the last like 30 to 40. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's no shortage of that shit. And also, I feel like goofy, but also kind of cool or kind of scary is like that's comics' wheelhouse, right? Like
Yeah. I want to see.
superhero costumes are inherently kind of fucking goofy, you know?
I want to see Pepe Larraz Galactus.
Oh,
See Pepe Larraz draw fucking anything. Whatever.
I'm gonna sneak it in just because it's topical. I think a Kang series would also be brilliant, where you explore the kind of like the Moira issue of House and Powers
That would be fucking
with
cool.
Kang.
That would be really cool. Like
Yeah.
all the different iterations and like making some kind of timeline that
Yeah.
like connects it would be fucking awesome.
Kang is my favorite Avengers villain.
Is that real? Is it? Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah.
How come?
I've always loved Kang because I love the idea of a villain who you literally can't stop because he is time. Like if you beat Kang, the future version of him can always come back. He's an ever-present threat because of that, and also you don't even know what form he's going to take because of all the different versions of him and the ways that he's existed. The fact that he's been a hero, been a villain, he's existed in ancient Egypt alongside Apocalypse and the end of time. I just think that's really fascinating. Like he's the only character who's not a cosmic being or a deity who has essentially conquered time.
Yeah, it's like if you took a bunch of dots on a straight line that branch out and stuff, and you like erased one of the dots, every other dot's still there.
Exactly. Kang will always be there. I just love that.
Feels like he's like inevitable.
Yep. 100%.
Kang is.
Yeah.
It's like me with you.
Kang
Sean. I'll
is.
always be there.
solid.
Yes. I love that. I feel like he is more than Darkseid is, but that's just me.
Well, I don't think Kang ever just fell down the stairs.
No, he's got that.
Well,
cool hair.
that's one of those dots.
Okay, so we have to jump into the news.
Do we have to?
We sure do, and it's a doozy this week
Some weird
because it is a little freaky. So I'm gonna start with the thing that really I can't imagine criticism for, which is the fact that we now have our Miss Marvel. Iman Vellani has been cast as Miss Marvel for the Disney Plus series. Now, if that name isn't familiar to you, there's a good reason for that. We don't know her.
She doesn't even have an IMDb page.
Exactly.
Really?
She's super
Yeah.
new. Yeah.
That's
wow.
cool.
And I think who knows how she'll, be in terms of the role. If they picked her, there's probably a really good reason for that, because I think what I read was that this was an exhaustive process to find the right person for the role. And it reminds me of the casting of Tom Holland. Not everyone loves him, but he was relatively unknown, certainly unknown to me. And he now is...
He's popped up on everything.
He's a movie star.
Yeah, he's a movie star, but beyond that, he's also many people's... I know there's not everyone here is going to agree, but he's many people's definitive Spider-Man.
Sure.
Maybe under 20 years old or something.
He's my definitive Spider-Man.
Cool. Make fun of young people, right?
No,
Yeah.
it's cool. Oh,
Great.
that's something to make
Old
fun of.
gatekeeper. Good for you.
I'm not gatekeeping. That's cool.
Just kidding.
Didn't he get the job by doing like backflips and shit?
Yeah, it was like he was up against like 2 or 3 other people in the finals, and the fact that he like had a gymnast background was the thing that I think landed it, because he like opened a scene by like running in, flipping in, or something like that, and they're like, "Oh, that's fucking great." Yeah, we don't,
I bet I bet this girl got it by like stretching.
Her just arm, just she's got super long arms. This is perfect.
That's a really funny concept to me. That like the way people audition is trying to physically imitate a superpower. So like if you want to be Nightcrawler, people literally try teleporting into a room.
I like the idea that she just showed up with like Hulk hands on that she had painted like a human skin color, and she's just like, yes, like oh perfect, she's got it.
She's seen Step Brothers.
I don't have much more to say other than I am really excited for this series. Like, Miss Marvel is amazing. I probably love her more than I do Miles, if you're just talking about like the new staples. Just because, like, although Miles, like I see a lot of me in Miles. Miles is kind of cool. Like, Miles has a girlfriend who's pretty, and he's, you know, kind of popular in high school and stuff like that. And he's a genius and all these things that I wasn't at that age. And Miss Marvel, Kamala, is goofy and nerdy and loves to write fanfics and plays World of Warcraft.
She's one of us.
Yeah, she feels like me. And there's nothing like her in comics, in superhero comics. So that's why I love her so much. And so I hope that, and I'm sure they can get those things onto the screen, because I feel like she'll resonate with so many people.
For sure. Yeah, I'm kind of with you where, like, there's not much to say because obviously we're still so early days here, but I'd expressed this in the past where this was exactly what I wanted out of the casting. I wanted them to find an unknown. I wanted them to find a young actress who we don't know and who, you know, I think particularly like in the context of the MCU, right? Like being this actor that you can't associate with another character alongside all these like larger than life figures that we've watched for 10 years. Like that's Kamala's narrative, right? Is like she's the Avengers' biggest fan and then she gets to become one, you know? And I'm stoked for it, you know? Like I've only ever read the first volume of her own book, but I remember I was like looking for books to try and get my cousin's kids into comics, and that was like one of the first ones I went for, because it was like, hey, like what other book is being led by like a teenage girl right now, you know? And yeah, I totally with you. I think this character already resonates with a lot of people, and I think the more that you can expand that out, and you know, like it being a Disney Plus series is gonna put her in so many other kids' lexicon, you know, and like it's exciting to think of how many young girls will be able to look at her as their favorite superhero, you know? And I of course have to give her big ups because she's from Jersey. So what's up?
You didn't have to put like, you know, you didn't have to dampen it at the end like that. Like,
Yeah,
you were doing a great job.
Why would you say
lived in
so many
New Jersey,
positive
you're from
things
suburban
and then,
Pennsylvania, which is a million times worse. So don't even come at me.
and just flush it down the toilet like that?
All right, whatever, Texas.
You know what I love? I love when people from the tri-state area, which are all is like essentially the same, argue about which.
Whoa!
mean,
I
come
take
on,
personal
that's not-
No, that's some disingenuous bullshit right there.
Whoa!
All right, here we go,
Go
Marco.
on.
Yeah, you know, it's not the city.
It's not fucking the city, bro. It's literally called the tri-state area. It's not, Manhattan. No, tri-state. 3 states, 3 separate states. Stay on your side of the water.
Man,
of
you
shit.
really, I know.
Damn,
now
bro, fine, I will.
Now I get why he likes Swamp Thing so much, because he's just a swampy ass boy. But anyway, like I said, Pete, we're doing a great job until the end. And just to add to it, you know, when Marvel was working on diversifying its characters and you know, doing legacy characters and stuff in the last 8 years or so, Miss Marvel was indeed one of the standouts, and like younger readers really identified with her and Miles for sure. So while that in itself is already niche because it's comic books, when you bring that to a television format, and Disney Plus is very popular. Everyone obviously knows how well The Mandalorian did and stuff. Like, you have to think this is a huge opportunity to really draw in a bunch of people.
Yeah. Put her over. Even
Like,
more.
Miss Marvel's going to be a popular Halloween costume in a year or so.
Oh, definitely.
We're allowed to fucking go trick-or-treating in a year.
I normally don't. Normally, I'm like, on the superhero origin through television series. Historically, I've said like characters with powers that require CG should be in movies. This is one of the few times where I don't feel like that, and the reason is because so much of what Kamala is about is her family life and you know who she is as a person. And I think you need time to flesh that out because she's unknown,
Yeah.
whereas if it was like Spider-Man, like, okay, you could do without, like, look at how they did it in the movies. Like, we didn't even see Uncle Ben. You don't need it. Everyone knows it already. Miss Marvel, people don't know it. So I think it's vitally important. Now, the biggest question, and this is critical, is does she make the jump to the movies after one season of the show? Does she never make the jump, or does she make the jump and have a series going at the same time?
I think the last one probably.
Mm.
I don't know that she would get a solo movie because I like
Yeah.
to take it back to something you just said before, Sean, like generally when you've made that case about the superheroes on TV thing, and I don't mean to speak for you, so correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like the big hang up for you is more often than not like budgetary restrictions and the fact that like you can't recognize the character properly. And I don't think you have that problem on Disney Plus, right? Like these shows have big budgets, and if the WandaVision trailer that we saw is any indication of the effects levels and budgets that they have, they're spending a lot of money on these. So to me, I feel like it would be a step backward if she went to having a feature film after you have a TV show that's, ostensibly the same level of quality, but like with more character development, the ability to have a larger supporting cast and flesh them out more. Because that's like, I think, one of the criticisms that you could fairly levy at Far From Home, right? Where like I think the MCU Peter Parker does have supporting characters that are likable, but you don't know them that well. Whereas like Kamala having like a best friend or parents or whatever, like those are all things that you can really develop and spend some time with. So I could totally see her anchoring a show, and then when it is time for the next Avengers or a Young Avengers movie, or maybe she makes a cameo in a Spider-Man movie or something, like,
Sure.
I think any of those things are totally open, and why wouldn't you do that, right? Because it's great. It's a great opportunity for cross-pollination, because it's the same way that, like, we know that WandaVision is going to be the show, but then Scarlet Witch is going to be in Doctor Strange 2, right? And you got to imagine that Bucky and Falcon are going to come back to, the MCU big screen events at some point after we've gone through this other narrative of their little side adventures,
Yeah.
which is actually really exciting to me, because I feel like you have an opportunity to like be a lot more flexible because you have these shows to play around. Oh, flexible with Miss Marvel.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Jersey wet.
It's fine.
of course.
Flush it down the toilet.
I want to flush you down the toilet, piece of shit. So
Try.
yeah, I think in
It'll
general
clog.
it's a good idea, and it's one that I'm excited to see come to fruition, like that interplay of the two.
Sure.
Yeah. Good, Marco.
So I agree with what Pete's sort of laying out. I don't think it'll be like one season and then a movie. I definitely think she's going to need, Disney's going to need to see how they sort of, the audience reacts, and then decide whether or not it's going to be like a right move to put her in a movie. I don't think it's going to be a solo movie until maybe if she decides to stick with the character, we see how long it sort of plays out until she's a little bit older, maybe. Because I feel like we're going to get to a point where things are going to transition to a Young Avengers. I definitely think she'll make an appearance to a Young Avengers movie, or even, like Pete said, Spider-Man. But I think from as of right now, it'll be the show, if it's good, a second season, and then she'll be peppered in maybe somewhere along the way. But I don't think it'll be in anything major until later down the line when she's a little more established from a show perspective, and maybe like plot sort of dictates it.
Sure.
But otherwise, she's kind of just like, she'll be here in the space, she'll own it, and then we'll sort of see where she goes from there.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe that she will it certainly feels like a Young Avengers movie is something down the road.
No
and
doubt. There's no way it's not.
And I have to imagine she is the headliner for that. It's probably gonna be a team of a bunch of people that no one is familiar with, like casual audiences. I mean,
Yeah.
so like you're gonna need the star power for it. And I don't know if Tom Holland's Spider-Man is something that they're figuring into it. Maybe they are. I think that's a kind of a nebulous situation to begin with. But Miss Marvel seems like where they're going. I maybe they'll plan a solo movie for her. I don't know. Maybe she appears in a Captain Marvel sequel or something.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense.
That's a
Yeah.
possibility as well. I think the expectation is for her to be the front and center figure of a Young Avengers movie. So,
Well, you mentioned Spider-Man, so let's talk about him.
okay.
Rather,
Have to?
yeah.
You can
Let's
leave,
let's
Cale.
talk. Let's talk
All right,
about. Let's talk about one of his villains. Let's get more specific. Let's talk about one of his villains that people hated in Amazing Spider-Man 2. We're talking about Electro. Now,
Green
why-
Goblin. Oh,
Uh,
that Green Goblin was a lot worse than Electro.
Okay. Jamie Foxx is coming back to play Electro in Spider-Man 3. Not Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man 3. Tom Holland's Spider-Man 3. The MCU's Spider-Man 3. How does this make sense?
So,
$1 million question.
I don't think it is. I mean,
$1 million is
the,
that's how it makes sense.
we have the whole multiverse thing, right? So I don't think that a character might spill into the universe, and Electro having electric powers can fuck with the time thing
What are you
and go
talking
into it.
about?
I was gonna go
So-
somewhere and it didn't work out.
So, okay, to build off Marco's whatever bullshit he said, what I've seen floating around is that WandaVision is going to fuck up the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be the start of it. Spider-Man 3 is going to be like what's happened because of it. And then Doctor Strange will be him and Wanda fixing it.
Interesting.
So this
Okay.
could be like a nod toward the multiverse.
Now, I'm actually going to get into a Sean Soapbox segment here.
Okay.
I rarely do.
All right,
I'm gonna
everybody
do it.
mute.
Yeah, please.
Because I
Everyone
have
hit
been-
mute.
I have been talking about this for years, okay? Years. I've been saying the same thing, that Sony has a plan to make it so that the MCU and the Spider-Man universe, or Sony's universe of Marvel characters, are interchangeable in the minds of audiences, because it will mean that their movies will make that much more money. To the resistance of Kevin Feige, for sure, before Sony took Spider-Man away. And they did that because they needed Marvel to know, hey, we control all the cards. And what happened? They made a deal for Marvel to be able to continue to use Spider-Man in their movies. And what have we seen since then? Well, I will remind you that in the Morbius trailer, we saw Vulture. We saw Michael Keaton.
Yeah, Michael Keaton.
And in that same trailer, something that people denied, but it was there, a poster of Spider-Man that says wanted for murder. The murder of who? Mysterio in Far From Home.
Bum, bum, bum.
There has been constant conversation, and now everybody wants to say it. And this is, look, I don't always, get in my own head about this stuff, but I have to here because this is what we've been talking about. Now everybody wants to say that there's going to be a Spider-Man what's the word? A multiverse movie where with all the Spider-Men against the Sinister Six. That is so clear. It's so obvious. Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, and Tobey Maguire are going to team up on screen to fight the Sinister Six. It's going to happen. There's no doubt in my mind. And it's because Sony will eventually need to extract Tobey Maguire from the MCU, and they're going to do it with the movie I just described to you. And in return, the MCU is going to get, in my opinion, Miles Morales. That's what I think. That's my big theory. And I have not been wrong so far. I'm just saying.
So just to clarify your theory, you're saying that on the other side of this, Tobey Maguire would be Peter Parker? Or you're just saying...
I said Miles Morales, didn't I?
No, you did. Yeah. But I was just trying to follow, because you said that they needed to extract him. So I was just like trying to...
I meant Tom Holland. They needed to extract Tom Holland from the MCU, and in his place, we'll get Miles Morales.
I see. Okay. That's interesting.
Because we know that there's been a lot of conversation about Tom Holland appearing in the Venom sequel. In fact, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe I remember him saying that he had been involved or that there was a possibility of him being involved. Once that happens, the floodgates are open. And I believe that the floodgates have been open ever since Sony and Marvel got back together on Spider-Man. And Electro being in an MCU movie is the absolute proof of the fact that these worlds are colliding. And I think you guys are onto something with your referencing of what's happening with the multiverse. But I also think this started with Endgame. I think it started with Endgame and with what all happened there with them going back in time and fudging with stuff.
Sure, right. I mean, like that the whole conversation that that Banner has with what's her name?
The Ancient One?
Yeah, the Ancient One. It's literally talking about how their actions are creating a multiverse, right? And that, like, if you take the stone from this reality will continue to exist and it'll be fucked. So, yeah, I mean, we've confirmed that there is a multiverse at play already, and it seems like they're getting more and more... Like, I feel like, to your point, they've been exposing us to that idea over time so that when it happens, it's like, oh, right, like in Endgame and Spider-Man, not what the fuck is happening, you know?
Exactly.
The Miles thing is interesting to me because I could definitely see the other side of this, them having that being an end goal, but where I guess I get tripped up with your theory there is the idea of like, well, if they're trying to connect the universes more and more, why would you want to pull Tom Holland out rather than just roll that in? And I wonder if maybe it wouldn't be like he goes and jumps ship to their universe and Miles is in the MCU as much as they just find a way to double dip and give you both.
Because Sony doesn't actually want that. Sony and again, if you want to know why I think these things or how this theory has developed, we've talked about this on a lot of episodes. But the where this all comes from is the Sony leak. The Sony emails leak, the Sony hacks. That's where all of this started. We already know that Sony wants to retain control over Spider-Man. They're losing money by not having the actual character able to appear in their own movies. They can't do that right now. And the reason why they didn't work out, why they decided they wanted to break up last year or 2 years ago, whatever it was, is because of money. And I said it then. Sony is going to say, we're taking Spider-Man back. Because they want to retain control over this character. I don't think that Miles is as important to them as Peter Parker is. Especially because they already have the Spider-Verse movie, the animated stuff that they've been doing, where Miles is the main character. So in the animated space, Miles is dominant for them. They need Peter in the live-action space. I don't think that Marvel benefits as much from having Peter Parker Spider-Man as they do Miles for the simple fact that Miles Morales is the future of the Spider-Man brand as it relates to younger people. Tom Holland is getting older. He's aging out of a Young Avengers space. I don't feel like you can reasonably say in 3 years when the Young Avengers, or 4 years when the Young Avengers movie comes, that Tony or that Peter Parker still fits that bill. He'll already be a college-age person. Miles Morales won't be. I think that's the future of the MCU, is with Miles as a core member of the Young Avengers.
I definitely agree with you on that. I guess I'm wondering. Oh no, I'm not. I'm ignoring you, Phil. I'm wondering if we might not see something kind of similar to the way that they're portraying their relationship in the Insomniac game, where like Peter Parker is like 23, I think, something like that, and Miles is like a high school kid, and based on like the timeline we're talking about, something like that could make sense too, where if it is like the MCU Spider-Man movies moving forward are about Miles, and that like Peter is like more on the periphery because he's in these Sony movies, and maybe he still comes for like the team up movies and stuff like that, and there is like some kind of cross-pollination there still, because even to that point you made before, right, with Miles, like they would have to let them use Miles, because they do still have the rights to that character. So, like, no matter what happens, they need to keep playing ball if Spider-Man stays in the MCU at all.
I think it's a possibility, because I think what you're saying, Sean, is pretty fair about Tom Holland aging out here. In Young Avengers, if I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I read it, but Vision was like a mentor figure to that team.
Yeah.
I wonder, and Spider-Verse is kind of something that makes me wonder this, is if in a Young Avengers movie, Tom Holland Spider-Man is the mentor figure to that team in the way that Iron Man was the mentor to him.
Yeah.
Which is something that happens in Spider-Verse, kind of. Peter B. Parker is Miles' kind of mentor figure in aspects. And Tom Holland Spider-Man is the first MCU like young character figure to be a superhero. So for him to, it's a passing of the torch. Iron Man, the first MCU character, was the mentor to the first young superhero character. That character is then the person passing the torch to a group of new young superheroes.
And that would be like a good arc for him too, right? Like in the context of the films, is like in in Far From Home, they very much give you that impression, right? That like Tony's gone and Peter is inheriting that role in some way as like the next generation of heroes,
So my theory aside, I guess, how do you guys feel about Jamie Foxx returning as Electro in Spider-Man 3? Everyone thought it'd be Kraven. That was the prevailing theory. Obviously, that's not thrown out the window. Spider-Man movies are notorious for having more than one villain in them. But how do you feel about Jamie Foxx as Electro, who, by the way, will not be blue? It's not going to be the Ultimate Universe iteration. Jamie Foxx did confirm that. So,
they're going to put him in the dumb star head.
I hope so.
That would be so good.
Yeah. I mean, they made it work for fucking Mysterio. Why couldn't they make it work for him?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, Mysterio's costume
I didn't see it.
Is so goofy, but like it also can look badass. Like if it's because like if you see it in a live action sense where there's like smoke under the helmet moving around, like he definitely looks a little bit less like a dude with a fishbowl on his head.
I was always scared of Electro when I was a kid.
Really?
Interesting.
Yeah, Electro was scary to me. When I went to Universal Studios, there's a Spider-Man ride there, and in it, Electro, who by the way was he was in the animated series, but it was like a weird version. He only appeared one time. This version of Electro, he jumps onto, you're in like this little car or whatever. He jumps on your car with a massive plug type of thing, and he jams it into your car, which causes it to electric shock.
That's
and your
cool.
car starts bumping around, and he's laughing hysterically with electricity coming out of his body. And I was horrified by that. I thought that was really crazy.
That's awesome.
So I've never seen Electro as goofy. I've always seen him as like scary and serious.
Yeah. Okay. So on the note of Jamie Foxx, I've mentioned before, like, I don't think Amazing Spider-Man 2 is very good. But I don't think that those movies were very tight. So like, I feel like any negativity around Jamie Foxx, it's like, I'm not necessarily willing to like put that on him, because I just don't think the movies were that good. Like, I've seen him in stuff where I thought he was a really good actor. So like, I don't know, like with a better vision and, more, I don't want to like say a better director or anything like that, because like, I don't, that's not necessarily, there's a lot of things that can lead to a movie not coming together. Right. But with the machine of the MCU, which is a well-oiled machine behind it, I have faith that this movie will come together better than the Amazing Spider-Man. Yes, yeah. Than the Amazing Spider-Man film. So, my reaction isn't really necessarily like overtly positive or negative. I'm more interested by what you laid out in terms of like, what does this mean for the narrative? Like, how is it going to connect to those past films, and is that really going to be the crux of that film? And like, who else could show up? Like, could we see a cameo from like a Willem Dafoe or something like that? Those are that's kind of where my mind starts going.
My God, I would lose my.
Can you imagine if he shows up as like an older, like kind of grizzled Norman? Like, that would be fucking rad.
I say what you will about the previous 5 Spider-Man movies, they're kind of divisive. The Amazing 2 being more divisive than the Tobey Maguire films. One thing I think that has to be universal is how fucking good Willem Dafoe was as the Green Goblin.
Nobody else could play the Green Goblin. Like,
he's such an extraordinary actor that's kind of underrated too. He's man, I would go out of my mind if he came back as the Green Goblin in one of these movies. He could fucking be in an Avengers movie for all I care. He could fucking carry it every time he's on the screen.
The warehouse scene between them is like, it's so good. Like, where he like acts like he's scared and then he like turns on him. Like, he's electric, man. Like, that costume is
funny
like
word choice.
No, he's a goblin.
I just keep falling into these like unintentional puns.
And President Norman with Willem Dafoe, that would be mental.
Yes, like fuck yeah, dude, I would love that.
But we're not here to talk about Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin coming back. I understand that. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting too excited about a thing that may never happen, and that's my life story.
You excited about anything that could happen in a Spider-Man movie is great. So whatever you need to do.
Yeah, fair. I never saw Amazing Spider-Man 2. I disliked the first one a lot, and it turned me off from seeing a sequel. But and from all accounts, it was much worse. It seems like there was a lot of scripting issues and screenplay problems.
It's messy.
So I have to imagine that how Jamie Foxx was in that movie is not a reflection of Jamie Foxx as an actor. It probably had to do with direction. It probably had to do with writing. He is a really good actor. Obviously, Ray and Baby Driver and countless other movies. Yeah, bring him back. He's a great actor. That's one thing you can say about MCU movies is that they do a great job of bringing in great actors who have no interest in doing multiple films because they're busy actors or whatever. So doing one movie, that's true with the Spider-Man films especially, because you had Michael Keaton as Vulture, you had Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, 2 great A-list quality actors. I think Jamie Foxx is right there with them. Yeah, do it.
Awesome. I was probably a lot less harsh on Electro than a lot of other people. I thought they tried. It was misguided. It's the same problem that I have with any of the movies that weren't made by Marvel. They always avoid letting the character be who they are. And I felt like with Electro, they tried too hard to inject some. They tried too hard to give him a personality, and instead of they just made him weird. They just made him too weird, and they alienated people. In fact, Kevin Feige, from the leaked emails, we know that he saw the script of Amazing Spider-Man 2, and he felt like the scene in the kitchen where Electro's tweaking, where Jamie Foxx's character's tweaking and acting all crazy and stuff. He said that it basically made him unrelatable to audiences, and I think he was right. A superior creator with the mind of Kevin Feige behind everything means that Jamie Foxx's full powers will be on display, and we will get something that I think people will be happy with. I don't see it any other way. Like, why not?
Yeah.
So I'm all in.
Yeah, man.
Dude, I haven't thought about Ray in so long. That movie's fucking good.
Yeah.
You got me more excited about this after this conversation because he really is a talent.
Yeah, Sean, I saw his tweet. I said, all right.
Marco's gonna go see it either way. He doesn't care.
It's funny that Marco, who I feel like is famously more big MCU boy than me, he's the one sitting here going,
Marco doesn't get caught up in the hype machine though. He'll go see it and then be like, yeah, that was dope. Or it won't, and then he'll be honest about that.
So that aside, because I'm sure there's going to be so much conversation about this going forward, I am saying now that we will one day, including Cale, all of us, watch all of the Spider-Man movies
and have bold ass claim.
It's going to happen, and have a dialogue about Spider-Man on screen.
Let's fucking go. I'm ready. Yo, oh my God, Sean, I know you're trying to get off this, but do you think that the J.K. Simmons being J. Jonah again, like, does that fuck, I didn't even think about that. Fuck.
So I wasn't gonna bring I thought about it, but I wasn't gonna bring it up because time, but since you did, screw it. We might as well talk about it. That is the hidden wrinkle, I feel like, of all of this. Because he's
J. Jonah Jameson is Kang.
Wait,
J. Jonah is inevitable.
There are multiple.
Of different races? Well, shoot, that's fascinating.
He's a multiple reality guy. Why not?
You think you're black in another reality?
I mean, I'm not saying
distant reality. Like 20 degrees away.
I think that is pivotal because you have to ask yourself, well, what does that imply? Does he have an awareness of the fact that he transitioned? Did it happen as a result of what happened in Endgame? Something that we are not asking is this a situation where they actually changed their own reality? Is there something in their reality that's not what it was before the events of Endgame?
The thing that I think is a very interesting wrinkle in that conversation too is it doesn't even have to be the same J. Jonah or Electro, right? Because just because they're physically the same actor, that's how it works in a lot of alternate realities, right? Where it's like, oh, it's just this reality's Peter Parker and different things happen to him, but he looks the same and he has a relatively the same background. But then there's also totally disparate versions where it's like a totally different thing, right? Where he's a cartoon pig. So those are interesting questions too, especially when you add the thing that you said earlier about Jamie Foxx saying that it's not the ultimate version of Electro with the blue skin and where he's just all electric man. If it's going to be Jamie Foxx in a more traditional suit, that implies he's a different Electro.
Do you guys
Potentially
want to see lightning bolts coming from his head?
Yeah, dog. We talked about that.
Starface.
Yeah.
Starface.
Want it all. Something to chew on for sure. And We will do that going forward. Trust and believe.
It's the hype shit.
Exactly. Last thing we're going to talk about before we get into these book reviews is that Batman is jumping. He's invading our space. Batman is pushing up against us because he is going to be the star of a new podcast coming to Spotify called Batman Unburied. We don't know a lot about it. David Goyer is a part of putting this together. His production company, Phantom 4, is working with Warner Brothers on this project. And all he really said about it is that it's going to explore the darker aspects of Bruce Wayne's psychology.
Great.
I've been a fan of narrative podcasts for some time and was looking for the right story. Returning to Batman seems like the perfect opportunity. We'll be using the unique advantages of audio to dig into the more nightmarish members of the Dark Knight's Rogue Gallery. This will be coming sometime in 2021.
And give me a Batman-led podcast where he brings on like other superheroes. Like, yo, what's going on? Like, I know, like last time
Batman
we
has a
chatted,
talk show.
Yeah, you know, like something like that.
Holy
I
shit!
need
Batman
to-
hosting Hot Ones.
Holy shit!
It's literally
Batman
just like
coast to
Space
coast.
Ghost.
Why?
Yes,
I
Pete.
was literally thinking that.
Fuck yeah, dude. And he's got like his band leader is the Joker or something. You
Holy
know?
shit! That's so fucking good.
The
That's all
Joker
I
is
need.
his Paul F. Tompkins. Oh no, what's Paul Shear? That's his name.
Flash is his first guy. He's like, so be honest with me, you're Superman. Who's faster?
Who does Moltar be?
Clayman. Clayface.
Clayface. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Firefly.
Oh,
That's-
that's
that
good
would work
too.
Clayface is that's a very good answer. Or no, wait, shut up. The fucking okay, Phil, you're gonna remember this. The great big tower that made the evil robot Batman in the animated series.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's good. What was that thing's name?
I'm getting really attached to this fake podcast that we're producing, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we
Psycholo-
should make this podcast.
Well, yo, here's the thing. We just pay Kevin Conroy on Cameo every week.
Yo.
It's hilarious.
Hard act, Cale.
Hard act.
Oh, that's a hard act to follow.
Hey.
Fuck.
Shit, I was gonna do a Jersey Batman thing and everything. And
We
this
got
is much
so
better.
derailed.
Yeah, it's chill.
Shut up.
Yo, it's funny. Cale made an offhand comment about it, but like I remember when I first saw this news and they're like, "Oh, it's gonna be a podcast that explores the psychology of Batman." I was like, "Oh, great! What novel? What a novel direction for a Batman story."
My parents were killed in front of a Wawa. They were trying to get hoagies.
They were going to pick up pork roll.
My psychology's so wicked twisted, bro.
Were they instead
The
of a movie, they're
jokster's responsible for ending Hoagie Fest.
You're losing the accent. It's you're
It's turning
injecting
into
a lot
a
of other
Delco
shit.
accent. That's a Philly suburb thing.
Phil, they were coming out of a Springsteen concert.
If the boss had been there, he would have saved him.
How did I start dressing like a bat? It's when they killed the boss in front of the stone pony.
Wait, hold on. I want to change Jersey Batman's background. His parents weren't murdered. It was just Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, that's what I'm
was
saying. They killed him in front of the stone pony when he was trying to eat some hoagies.
No, but again, you're doing the Philly thing.
I went back to Delco. I'm sorry.
That's no one says stew in New Jersey.
It's a Delaware County thing. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Okay, so Batman podcast.
Even
right?
you know what? Even that Batman podcast would be. Let's do that one.
Yo, I've been saying since Phil came up with Jersey Batman that I want to just go to places in New Jersey with him dressed up as Batman and fucking fuck with people.
Hey, Joker, I keep telling you, you wouldn't be so pale if you went to the beach more. Go down to the shore.
gotta go to the shore.
Tan laundry Joker.
Oh my god.
To be fair, I think the Joker's got the laundry bit down because his suits always look fresh.
Impeccable.
It's a man of taste.
He's wimpy though. He's gotta hit the gym more. Lift some iron, bro.
Pump that shit.
Yeah, Sean, it's pretty chill.
Yeah, it's pretty chill.
Yeah, Marco, it is. Yeah, you're right.
It's chill.
David Goyer sucks. I'm out.
Is it David Goyer? Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's his company,
I
at
was just
least, I
reading a quote from David Goyer.
Phil was way too busy thinking about his Jersey Batman bit.
Yeah, I was like, where's he gonna go this time? Chris Christie's the Penguin.
Well,
Fucking bring back Space Ghost, guys.
I would give anything. Anything.
Isn't there a space? Maybe I'm bugging. Isn't there a Space Ghost show on or coming to HBO Max?
I think they're reviving
really?
it. I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they might be.
What?
Oh.
I
Ooh,
believe
I feel
read
like that was news.
who do I send the leg to? I will saw through bone to get that. That will make me think about HBO Max, and that's for real.
So on the note of the podcast that we are getting, I think this might actually be the only one of the like superhero podcasts that have been talked about that I'll try. I'm very interested in the idea of hopefully not a comic book in audio form. Batman has like a black case book where he writes about some of the things that he's encountered that are unexplainable. I think that would be very interesting. Or if he was doing psychological profiles on his various villains that also gave you insight into who he is as a person. I feel like, and maybe it has a narrative through line. I think those are the kinds of stories I'd be most interested in. But I don't think they're actually going to do that. I think they're probably going to do like the Wolverine podcast that there was. It'll probably be something like that, which I don't think I care about.
That was the regrettable birth of Canadian Wolverine.
Regrettable. That's one of your few bits I like.
Yeah. The best part of this stupid show.
I recently listened through to the Sandman audio series, and that was really well produced. I think if it's something similar to that, I think it would be something worth tuning in. And if it's on Spotify, that's obviously free to access. You just have ads to deal with, whereas you had to buy the actual thing on Audible. Yeah. So I mean, maybe it'll see more success. I don't know if the Wolverine one was on Spotify necessarily, but if this one is specifically by that platform, I think it might do well.
I think it was specifically Spotify. I think it was a Spotify original.
Yeah. Okay.
Yo, if we're gonna do a Space Ghost Batman, it has to be an Adam West Batman.
Oh yeah, dude.
Definitely.
Oh yeah.
Greetings, old chum. Joining me today is Tom York.
He's basically David Letterman.
Oh my god.
This is insane.
Yeah, sorry.
You guys are insane.
I think you mean genius.
Somewhere in that intersection is where you guys are right now.
Just a thin line we're teetering on.
Yeah.
That's where all the best Adult Swim shows are made, so.
Oh, true.
I don't think I've watched a single Adult Swim show ever in my life.
Wow.
Missing out, man.
So
There's so many
formative.
good ones.
That's why Sean never got into anime. I feel like that's the inroad for so many people our age for anime.
Tsunami.
You might be right.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched Toonami, right? Like Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
But that's about it. I turned it off after that. Yeah. So we don't know what this podcast is going to be, but at least through the book we're about to talk about, we can evaluate the different characters in Batman's life and why Batman has ruined them all. We're talking about Batman 3 Jokers by Jeff Johns, Jason Fabok, and Brad Anderson. This is the second issue in the series, and we are going to get into that right now. So I think we all enjoyed 3 Jokers to varying degrees, those of us that were on that episode where we talked about the book. And I am so curious For those of you who liked it but didn't necessarily love it, or wherever you were on the spectrum, away from me, which was where I just loved it plain out, how you guys feel about this one, because I definitely think that as much as that was an issue one plus, because it was so long, this takes everything that the first issue was doing, every element of it, and ramps it up tremendously. And this is, I think, the issue where you're either going to like this book or not, because of what it implies about what the Joker is, and because of how it tweaks and pokes at the relationship between Batman and Barbara and Jason and all the versions, all the variations possible of those relationships. So yeah, I don't even want to talk yet. I want to hear what you guys have to say first.
I think I was the most critical of the first issue, and I think my biggest thing was just like I didn't feel enough of a connection necessarily. Like, from a structure perspective, the art, the beats, it was all there, but I just didn't necessarily care about the issue and everything going on around it. I think this one, to your point, grounded me a little bit more. Although I think I've just kind of come to realize that maybe the relationship between Jason Todd and Batman isn't necessarily one that does anything for me. Like I understand the context around it. I understand like why it matters, but I don't necessarily know that it's engaging for me. And I think for me, it's definitely portrayed a lot more strongly here, and it's something I can empathize with. But I mean, I still kind of have a general feeling that, all right, cool. Like this is a good series, but I'm not getting like so much out of it that I'm like, wow, over the moon about it necessarily. And I think what I'm more interested in is the Barbara Jason relationship. I just sort of see how that plays out. I Batman is like fine. But any of his interactions I feel are very just like stilted. He's a stone wall. It's not very engaging for me or interesting. And I think sort of what's going on in the background with the Jokers is still a little bit of a mystery for me. And I am sort of starting to see where they're going, but I don't know that I have all the context to really for me to confidently say like that's sort of the direction. Things are still a little bit up in the air, and yeah, I mean, otherwise, I feel like similar to the review of my last issue, which is like this is good work. It's just not jiving with me.
Very similarly, I wasn't around for book one, and when I read it, I think I imagine I felt very similar to you, Marco. I get it. It's fine. But book two for me really lost me with their portrayal of Batgirl. Actually, I hated her this issue. I think they did they made her that sort of tropey motherly figure until she was someone to kiss.
Yeah,
and that bothered me a lot. I think Batman's attitude toward Jason and Jason killing one of these Jokers is completely out of character. I think it's wildly bullshit.
Why do you say that?
Well, because just I did a little bit of looking this up after I read it, but I believe just as an example, in Red Hood and the Outlaws, Jason killed the Penguin and Batman kicked his ass for it. And he's done so before for all the killings he's done. And he stopped Jason from killing the Joker before. I think his attitude, oh, he's suffering. He's such a sad boy. I think it's garbage.
I think it's really funny that your example is from a Scott Lobdell book.
The most interesting thing to me about this is I'm vaguely curious at what the Jokers are up to. but that probably won't keep me hooked for too long.
What about you, Phil? Because you didn't even you weren't here for the last one.
I like it. I like both of these. I think they're both pretty good. I don't get too caught up in like what a character would do and wouldn't do in terms of like if this is in character or not, because the reality of comics is that with different authors, characters behave differently. It's just the reality of things, especially the further and further away we get from a real centralized continuity in comics. Like, you know, we used to have like a hard set and fast Bible with this stuff, and you know, the olden days, less and true as more and more hands take control of these characters. That kind of thing doesn't bother me. This to me feels more like a love letter of Batman comics, which is funny because oftentimes people are really critical of Jeff Johns' portrayal of Batman. I don't have an issue with it. And that said, I'm not a big Jason Todd fan. Typically, I didn't care about Judd Winnick's Under the Red Hood or anything like that. I don't have strong feelings about Red Hood or anything. Nor do I feel particularly strongly about Barbara Gordon. I like Barbara Gordon enough, but I don't feel super strongly about her. So, you know, I kind of find it interesting, our choice of protagonists here. Batman family is really vast, and we're going with Jason Todd and Barbara Gordon for obvious reasons because of their intersections with Joker. And I really like how Jeff Johns is choosing to set this up with like this triad of Jokers, where one's the comedian, one's the clown, and one is the criminal or something. Yeah. And like what their motives are respective to the narrative of the story. It's really good. And some of the dialogue has been really, really sound at the end of the first issue with the one Joker and Jason Todd, and what provokes Jason Todd into killing the one Joker was really, like, it made a lot of sense to me. Like, this person, and it always comes back to this conversation for hardcore Batman fans of always like, oh, why doesn't the Batman kill the Joker? Well, it makes sense why the Red Hood would. Yeah, I think this is a really solid book. I don't think it's particularly groundbreaking or anything, but you know, Jeff is, I think, such a strong writer that he can do something that's, I think this is like a really good introductory level kind of Batman comic if you've only read a few. And the other thing I really want to point out is just how gorgeous the art is.
Yes.
Yeah. Tebak's awesome.
Very good.
Yeah, he's incredible. Like, this is like Gary Frank tier stuff.
Said on our earlier review that this was three creators at the height of their powers.
Yeah.
And I strongly feel like this issue is a further showcase of that fact.
Yeah. Maybe the only thing I would criticize is the romancing Barbara and Jason. More in that family romantic drama doesn't do a ton for me, but I don't really think it didn't bother me that much. I rolled my eyes a little, but whatever.
What about you, Pete?
Yeah, I'm very aligned with Phil's opinion on this. I was definitely pretty with you on the first issue as well, Sean, where I enjoyed it. And I think that I very much align with what Phil's saying in terms of I don't really get tripped up in the idea of like, well, Batman wouldn't do this or Batman wouldn't act this way, because for a couple reasons. A, because, you know, I am not a super religious Batman reader, so I have read him in kind of like the context of different stories, and every Batman from every writer feels different in some way. So I think it's like a combination of maybe being under and overexposed to the character, where it's like I feel like Batman is one of the most malleable characters in comics. Yeah. And I think in my mind, right, like even with the context of what Cale said of like, I think Jason killing the Penguin is not the same thing as Jason killing the Joker. So that didn't bother me, because it feels to me that Johns is positioning it less as Batman being like, oh, like, you know, he's damaged, so it's okay, and more being like, well, it's my fault that he did it, so I am, I'm not going to hold him accountable in the way that I would hold someone else accountable, because like I am the source of this trauma just as much as the Joker, right? And his failure to act in the aftermath, regardless of the fact that he didn't know or whatever, that's how he feels, right? So to me, I also think of Batman as a character who's like, I have strict rules unless I decide to change my mind, and he does shit like that all the time. So like, nothing about that felt off base or out of character or anything to me at all. So the only gripe I had on any kind of story beat level was the romantic, I guess, exchange between them.
Yeah.
Just because it felt immaterial.
Well, we'll see, obviously.
Yeah, we'll see, right? I guess. And if it is going somewhere, I'm not particularly interested in that. To your point, Phil, where like and it's not even because I'm like, oh, like I love Dick and Barbara and I feel like they need to be together. It's just like, I don't know. Like the interpersonal Bat family, like incest drama doesn't really like do it for me. But whatever. Like if it goes somewhere, it goes somewhere. Maybe it'll be interesting. To me, what's interesting is the mystery, right? Of like,
why are there 3 Jokers?
Why are there 3 Jokers? What are the contexts of them? We've gotten a development in this issue that the original Joker predates Batman, and like what does that mean? Like there's those wrinkles are something that I'm interested in enough to want to keep reading, and to the point that that you made again, Phil, of like I like what Jeff Johns is doing on a writing level, and the art is fucking great. So it's like I'm along for the ride, and I've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, one thing I want to touch on real quick. I think what makes this book good. So I don't know if there's a character that has more of a burnout than the Joker the last few years, because he's wildly popular and he's been featured a lot in just greater media, right? So inherently reading this, I was a little fatigued right out of the gate because I've just been overexposed to Joker stuff.
Sure.
I overcame that quickly because of what Jeff was doing with Joker. Because in the first issue with the clown Joker, kind of doing the old, Denny O'Neil shtick with like the laughing fish and turning it into doing a shark thing with it.
Yeah.
And the poison venom in the flower and the shark cards. That was really refreshing because we don't see that a lot. And then in this issue, the way it starts off with the one Joker having comes off as like a family being held ransom for some weird atomic family dinner thing, only for it to be like a mannequin or whatever else.
Nuclear
family. Yeah. That was great too. Like the way we're setting tone to start each issue is terrific.
That really stuck out to me, that scene, because I thought it was like oddly sad. Like I don't think I've ever really felt much empathy for the Joker, but the idea that even in his own fantasy his son is afraid of him, I was like, that's like profoundly sad.
Are we sure that didn't happen at some point?
That's a good point.
Who the fuck knows? Yeah, I don't know.
So my feelings on this issue are very strong. I thought that this was great. And I continue to be impressed by everyone involved. But for the moment, with what Jeff Johns has to say about these characters. And that is ultimately why I was so interested in this book to begin with, is because I want to know, we all know what Batman is and, all these relationships, but I want to know what Jeff Johns has to say about them.
Right.
And that's why I walked in the door. I think that what we're seeing are 3 characters uniquely chosen for their relationship to, I guess, each version of the Joker that is presented here, in the process of grieving latent trauma at the same time. And that is going to inevitably produce actions that aren't necessarily commiserate with their normal behavior. And that's what I love about the story as well. Is like, normally would Batman stop or beat up the Red Hood or bring him to justice for what he did? Yeah. But would Batgirl? Yes. Batgirl didn't actually stop him from killing the Joker, and she could have. And that's something that Red Hood pointed out in the first issue was, when was the last time you missed with a batarang.
Right.
Did she miss?
Yes.
Because there was blood.
She didn't stop him from, from killing the Red Hood, and she could have. That was the or from killing the Joker rather, and that was the implication of the scene where, she's trying to take this righteous stance, but he's like, yeah, but you could have stopped me and you didn't do it. And I think her righteousness in terms of trying to produce justice against the Red Hood verbally and accosting Batman for not doing it when she could have done it and didn't do it says a lot about where she's at since she got out of her chair. And since the Joker did what he did to her. She hasn't dealt with him. And she wouldn't necessarily deal with him the way that Hood would, but she isn't going to stop him either. Because I'm sure she thinks the Joker should be dead. She's just not willing to take that step. The Red Hood is, in my mind, the negative end result of Batman.
Yeah.
And that is why Batman is so sympathetic and unwilling to bring Hood to justice in this case, especially because I'm not all the way convinced that Batman believes that what's happening right now, that these are all like living, breathing humans in the same way that everybody else is. I think he thinks there's something more going on than what meets the eye. And I believe that plays into it as well. Johns gets into the mind of Batman, a character who so many people have dealt with already, in a way that I found to be really interesting. The scene where he goes to confront Joe Chill in prison, and he
cool.
I mean, come on,
he
man.
adjusts his voice.
Yeah.
That
he doesn't have it at first.
Yeah, that was great.
And it's like any comic could have a moment like that, I guess, but they often don't. And then for that moment to be here, but then so many other things, it's wild.
To me, that is a thing that helps me relate to any portrayal of Batman, is when they show weakness in him.
Right.
Because I think it's like, it's fine for the meme of it all, and like it's fine in a story like, like Death Metal or whatever, where it's like Batman can beat anybody with enough preparation. Batman's got everything figured out. Batman's basically God, and like that's kind of tired for me. Like if it's in that context, fine, but I'm way more interested in the portrayal of Batman as like, a hurt kid in some way still, because he is a in this continuity, I don't know how old he is right now, but he's an adult man and at least his 30s, and a father and all these things, right, who is still not dealing with his childhood trauma, as so many of us don't. And to see him have that moment of vulnerability is like, it's humanizing. And it makes me able to connect with what he's going through emotionally right now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And how he failed his son.
Exactly. Red Hood is absolutely Bruce's greatest failure. And he has to come to terms with and live with that. But I don't feel like he deals with that every day. I don't feel like that's present for him all the time. But in this series, it has to be.
Right.
And now we're dealing with Batman's reaction to that. The Batgirl stuff, I've really enjoyed Batgirl so far in this series. She does come across as like, I hate to reference this trope because it does suck, but like the nag, where she's like constantly like, oh, you need to bring him to justice. Why are you letting him do this? Blah, 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 blah. And I think that's tired, but it's not what it seems here because of the wrinkle, like I said, of her letting Red Hood kill Joker. I think there's more than meets the eye with that. And then as far as the kiss goes, like, I don't know. I don't feel like there's a reason to really read more into it than what she laid out. I think she felt extremely sympathetic and close in that moment. They have a shared trauma. And I just think it was an expression of that. I don't feel like that's going anywhere.
I think I definitely agree it was like a shared expression, but I don't know that it was one that was like needed for anything. Like, if, to your point, right, if it's not leading anywhere, like, why show us? And then in the subsequent page, the panel right after, where she's like, we shouldn't have done that, in the corner you can see the book of like dealing with chronic pain and stuff. And it just felt like a weird sort of message, like how to sort of utilize her character like that. And I don't know that was in my mind, I don't know that was like an effective tool or to like portray her in any sort of way.
But again, I don't think that. So like, people in life do things that are not always meaningful, and I don't think that because they did that it has to have a greater meaning. I think it can be what happened, in response to this madness that's going on. I don't feel like the book is worse for showing us something that won't necessarily go anywhere.
Yeah, to your point, right? Like, sometimes friends just kiss and it doesn't necessarily go anywhere. Like, that is that's not unheard of.
It's not, but I think especially considering, like, I think Cale mentioned she was being a little bit more like motherly. She was the one who actually like cared about his, I guess, mental and emotional well-being, that she
expressed it.
Yeah, and expressed that. And like, I don't know that it was like necessary, because it feels more so focused around Todd than it does her necessarily, because she's the one who has moved on. She's the one who has managed through it. She says it in the thing, like it used to hurt, right, where he's still sort of hurting. And I don't know that was a good use of her character in that moment.
See, I don't. No, go ahead, Sean.
I don't even. First of all, why is it like you got to address your own element there, because you are putting the motherly thing. Like, why can't that be friendly? Why can't that be, sisterly or whatever? Right. Like, I don't think it has to automatically be motherly when a woman is caring about a person.
Right. Because to me, it speaks to what you just said, Marco, but I'm looking at it from the opposite perspective of like not criticizing it, where I think that makes it make more sense, because of the three people in this conversation that have this relationship to the Joker, Barbara's the only one who's dealt with her trauma. She's the only one who has actually done the emotional and physical work to get better. And I just said before, like, Bruce has never gotten over his parents being killed. Jason has never dealt with his trauma. And that is defining characteristics of both of those characters. Whereas Barbara is a character who is defined by overcoming trauma. So I think it totally makes sense for her to be the adult in the room, and to be the one who is like emotionally mature enough to support him, because Bruce abandons him again because he's afraid of dealing with the consequences of his actions. And Sean, you said this earlier. I think one of the themes here is not just that Bruce didn't deal with it and now he has to. It's that he didn't deal with it and he continues to not deal with it at the expense of Jason. So to me, I'm kind of aligned with Sean, where I feel like you guys are projecting a little bit, where like, would you say the same thing if it was a male character doing that? If it was Dick, like, would you say he's stuck being the father?
It's not.
Well,
it's not. It's the problem. It's Batgirl.
But again, like, why is a woman not allowed to have that role? Like,
but why is she?
Because of the reasons I just said. It's informed by her character. She's the only
what
character
else is she
in the
doing in this? What else is she doing in this book other than nagging and reminding the man of what he should be doing? Just like a mother does to her.
We're 2 issues into the book, Cale.
We're not talking about the rest of the book. We're talking about issue 2. Pete.
No, but you're talking about her role in the entirety of the story based on one issue.
How can I do that?
Where she plays a supporting
issue 2.
role.
I think, I don't know. I feel like you guys are bringing something from outside into it.
That's it's literature. Like it's a trope. It's not like it's everything.
It's a trope if it's not informed by anything.
Well, all right, fine, but like removing the motherly element, right? Removing the nagging element. I think I don't think that the the kiss is an expression necessarily of both of their traumas. More so, it's focused around a potential healing or like a potential uh sympathizing of Todd, and less so giving Barbara her own autonomy in that moment. I think from that written perspective of where how Jeff Johns is using her, I don't think is an effective tool, because it's focused more so around his trauma and less so around like had he leaned in and she moved away, I think that would have been a sign of maturity and growth for having him associate anything like that to healing or for sympathy.
I would agree with you there.
I just don't understand why a woman taking the role of a healer is bad.
Well, I'm saying removing that away. I don't think it's even focused on her. I think it's focused on Todd, and I don't think that they're getting that equal treatment.
Characters who take action are actors, and that's just a fact. She took an action. She acted. So that in that moment, that was objectively as much about her as it was about him, because she did it. She chose that. But we've been on this for long enough. I wanted to point out a few really cool visual elements of the book. There's the moment where Jason Todd is breaking into the I don't know what was, yeah, and
YMCA.
Yeah, it looked like a YMCA kind of thing because there's like a pool and like lockers and stuff.
I'm trying to find the exact panel, but it's where so when he breaks in, the last panel on that page is the chains broken and all the debris, and it's a broken face.
Yeah.
I love that visual element. Again, just a small reminder. It's not a major thing, but it's a small reminder.
Even above that, in the middle row, the first panel on the middle row looks like an intact one.
The first
For
panel.
YouTube listeners.
Oh, I see.
Oh, yeah. I didn't clock that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And Jason's been doing things. Jason Fabok has been doing things like that throughout the entire series. Most likely with some direction from Johns, but all of those moments and opportunities that they're taking to use the art to further advance the story in an unspoken way is just what I love about comics so much.
Yeah, and he's just like incredible. He has such a strong style. Like his Batman is very much like has that look of like when I think Batman, like this is the character I picture.
Absolutely. And then some of the smaller, maybe more obvious but fun moments. The joke that the Joker tells about the three octopus triplets that look exactly the same.
I thought that was pretty good.
And then Batman having to deal with the three dogs, and he didn't put them down. He sedated them. Yeah. I love those cues as well. Last thing that I feel like we should address before we move on to X Factor 4 is just the way the book ends with the Joker's capturing Joe Chill and asking him the question, why did you really kill Thomas and Martha? That's the only thing in the book that I did not like. I am personally opposed in every single version of it that I've ever seen of them adding a reason that Joe killed those people other than he was poor and they were not. He was hungry and desperate and they had what they had. They had money or whatever. I don't feel like that needs more. I feel like that's a strong statement on its own. And it's entirely possible that there isn't more to it, but I don't feel like this book would end on this cliffhanger if there wasn't.
Yeah.
Even just seeing Joe Chill alive and doing things as opposed to the only catalyst for Batman's origin is a bit off-putting, frankly.
Yeah.
It's just like that's like he's an actor that shouldn't be there.
I think
Uncle Ben, but the opposite.
Particularly
Yeah.
them trying to connect it to the Joker is something that it's like, come on. Like,
Well, in the original 1989 Batman movie, that
Right.
Joker is who killed Thomas and Martha Wayne.
right. And I'm getting the impression that it's going to be somewhat connected to the original Joker because of the whole he predates Batman thing of like, did he order this hit somehow or whatever? He created Batman and that's why he's obsessed with him. Like, you know, which is, I'm not super into that, but we'll see what happens.
See what happens. I mean, for me, I always kind of like it when it doesn't matter who killed Batman's parents. It's just a anonymous, person who did it. Maybe escaped the law. When we attach Joe Chill to it, it gives Batman someone that he can, put a name and a face to for it.
Mhm.
Don't think it matters, but I'm along for the ride. I didn't feel strongly about that cliffhanger because I want to see where Jeff takes the story, because he might do something interesting with it.
Yeah. All right. Let's close the door on Three Jokers for now. We'll certainly be coming back with a review of the third issue whenever that releases. Let's talk about X Factor number 4, part 2 of 22. Oh my God.
Only 20 issues left. Oh no.
This is sure different from X-Men, huh?
Yeah. So we've got Leah Williams on tap here, which is pretty interesting. She's been the writer on X Factor since it started. Carlos Gomez on art, Israel Silva on colors, Joe Caramagna, the incredible, impeccable one on letters, and of course the designer, as always, Tom Muller. I was very annoyed by this issue, I have to say.
Expound.
Really?
Yes, I was, because I feel like this issue, whereas issue 1 was exciting and had drama and, introduced us to all these new characters and concepts, and felt big and special, this felt like they took all of the excitement and sucked it out and gave us only the expository stuff. And I could hear the gears turning as I was reading this issue, because it was so blatantly obvious that this issue only exists to set up, to put the X-Men in trouble, basically, to put them in a situation where, all right, guys, we know that they can always resurrect, but now if they die during this tournament, they can't.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but I don't feel like, I don't know. We'll get into all that. I'll speak more later. And then, like they basically, for me, negated all of the stuff they did between Summoner and Rockslide, by having the reason that he's tweaking now be that he died in Otherworld versus that it was Summoner that killed him with that blade. I think that takes all the heat out of that situation between them. That should not have been the case. And then shutting off or destroying all the eggs because they were so worried.
That was crazy.
Well, and then retconning it in the same issue. Like they cut it off and then it's back on. It'll be fine.
Yeah, they did too much. I've like, Apocalypse, if you die, you're gonna be gone for a while, and sucks to be you. And then this massive info dump. Oh my God, this massive info dump by the Five.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Who all of a sudden have perfect knowledge of why Santo couldn't be resurrected normally, what happens when you die in Otherworld, and how it affects the way you'll come back. Like, come on.
So, we spent 26 pages to establish two things, which is if you die in Otherworld, you can't come back. And we blew up the eggs by accident because we were worried. And so if you die here, it'll take a while.
Well, yeah.
Dude, if this was Dragon Ball, It would have just been like, oh shit, Piccolo's dead. Well, we can't revive him for a while. Anyway,
Boy,
we're gonna go
Rock
punch
Slide's
Cell
weird
some
now,
more.
right?
You're really gonna compare this to Dragon Ball in terms of stretching things out? Is that where we're going?
Yeah, because the manga doesn't stretch things out.
Oh, now we're talking about the manga. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not even worried about the stretched out part. I'm worried about the ridiculousness of how much information characters suddenly have, and
Yeah.
the convoluted way that we're getting to the stakes that we have.
Too many word bubbles that say the same thing over and over. It was just we have finite space here for a story, and this is a story that honestly could have been told in 5 pages.
Yeah.
With details of at least.
I think the thing with this issue is I'm totally aligned with everything you guys are saying, where it feels like this is just setting up dominoes, right? Like, it's like, hey, the last issue was issue number 1. It's exciting, it's loud, it's flashy, it's an inroad that gets you excited. And then this one is like, okay, you're in? Cool. Here's all the information you need to know so that the next 20 issues don't need to be telling you things.
Bro, we could have done that on an info dump page with white background and black words. One of the classic, word pages we get.
Yeah,
with exposition.
I'm aligned with you for the most part. I think the I don't know, other side of that coin though is that if they had done it that way, we would have been like, oh, why they just info dump all this? Like, why didn't we show how they figured it out? But they don't show it anyway, so it's like it's not satisfying at all.
That's the shit that is good in Hoxpox and Dawn of X is like when all it's like extraneous exposition, they fucking word dump it on a side page.
No, right, but my point is that if they had done this in the same way, right, where if it was like rather than the 5 having a fucking monologue about it, if it was just like, oh yeah, the 5 figured it out and here's a page explaining it, we would have been like, well, how the fuck did they figure it out? And that doesn't make any sense and it happened too quick. And either way, I don't know that there's a satisfying way to give you all the answers to these questions that they needed to.
I don't necessarily agree with Phil, but I will say that some of the infographics represent information that was gathered later and presented to us now.
Yes.
So because of that, what Phil is suggesting could easily be done in a way of like, this is what we realized after the fact.
Sure.
Just to get us up to speed without the needlessness and the ridiculousness of the 5 just knowing everything.
Oh, I figured it out.
Don't need to bog it down. You can have an omniscient narrator or what you're suggesting, Sean, a future context of how they like. It doesn't matter how they figure it out. And if you're not going to explain it where they just know everything, just dump it and move on because it clearly doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, it only matters as much as we need that information to move forward.
Yes.
I also, I like. Even the idea that now if you die in Otherworld, I guess it makes sense based on what Otherworld is, that now all the possible versions of you converge into one body or whatever they tried to say. That feels like flim-flam to me.
It didn't make sense because the whole thing is that Cerebro backs you up, Cerebro's here, and your body is in an egg already. So what does it matter if you make the 2 connections in Krakoa?
Right.
Because it erased. They said it erased all the backups.
Which is stupid. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that doesn't
That's
make any
stupid.
fucking sense. It's like, why is you dying in another dimension coming through and messing with like technology in the real world?
My brain rationalized it as Saturnine, like a virus somehow.
Or like some spell thing.
Yeah, but
Like,
it's
but like
that's a leap in logic.
Yeah, it is a leap in logic, and even then, it's like, why? Like, to what end?
And also, she didn't do it.
That's a good
Like,
point
someone
too.
did
It
it.
just
Like,
fucking happens.
So this was my thing. If they would have said, okay, because of the way that Summoner killed Rockslide, the weapon he used, it's some kind of magical element that infected Rockslide on a
like a soul level.
Yeah. It took the words out of my mouth. And because of that, it corrupted the system. Okay, fine. Now that gives Summoner a key role, an actual enemy, right? It gives an enemy a key role in why the X-Men can't resurrect. I understand needing to get to that place, but to have it just be, oh, because they died over there. It's like, come on, man.
To your point, Sean, you know it would also have made that make a lot more sense? Summoner has been fucking living among them for how long? Like, Summoner could have figured it out and been like, Apocalypse trusted Summoner, so Apocalypse told him everything, and then now he knows that with this magic, he can fuck it up, and it's like, all right, cool, I buy that.
Or even still, he could have poisoned the well.
Yeah, like he could have done something before they went to Otherworld, so now Cerebro's backups are fucked, and Charles needs to compile the whole library, so maybe right now you can't be resurrected, so if you die while Cerebro's offline, you're dead forever. That would be the same, you'd have the same explanation, but it would be rooted in, like, terms and technology and rules that we already understand, right? And it's like, oh, the system was interrupted. Great. That's all I need.
Also, by the way, the story didn't even need you to shut off Resurrection at all because of the fact that, one, they lost the gate, and two, they're in a tournament. So like if you die in a tournament, right, and you get resurrected, you still lost. You lost your round or whatever.
Yeah.
So like if the stakes are, okay, the X-Men versus the Sword Bearers of Arakko, whoever wins, whatever they said in the last issue, whatever, fine. That's all it needs to be. The X-Men losing that is still them losing.
I think
and then they all die anyway.
Yeah. Or like I think it would have been also interesting. You just be like, oh, so these are the terms that you agree. This is the terms that we agree to, lest something happens, and then like that's something else that like from other conversations they've had with other diplomats, with other nations, with other whatever makes sense in the context. Is this person dies, well, you have to keep them dead.
Or like, go ahead, Cale.
Sorry, I was gonna turn the tide a little bit.
Okay, well then I'll just make this last point.
Yeah.
On that note, it could have just been a thing where like Saturni is like, if you die here, your soul stays here because I said so, and I'm magic. Oh, okay, great. That explains it. Like, we didn't need this convoluted fucking science fiction explanation for this shit.
Yeah, and that's a problem sci-fi writers in general have issues with, is they try to overcomplicate the whys of things. Like, oh, why can Cyclops shoot lasers from his eyes? It doesn't matter. It's the reality.
He can. I've already accepted it.
Yeah, so like sometimes it's more important to get to the destination than it is to tell us how we got there. And in this issue, I spent too much time explaining why, and when you do that too hard like it does here, we've poked holes in it because none of it really makes sense.
Cale, you were about to take us in a different direction. Go ahead.
Take us.
Vaguely. Can I point out that Polaris built a platform out of a dude's body who is still alive in memory of that dude?
But he's not.
He's not really alive.
It was the chunks of him that aren't alive or whatever. So it'd be like if parts of me got severed off and you guys turn it into some kind of art.
Well, I'm with Cale with respect to the fact that it feels over, like you're going too hard. Like, okay, he died and everything, and that sucks, and that's really bad, and you can honor him in a lot of different ways. To take his body and then make that be the ritual zone is just like cheesy. Like, I don't know.
Even still, that dude is still alive. He's over there.
He's like, oh yeah, that was my liver.
And also, like, I don't know. I don't want to rail on it too hard, but yeah, I agree with you.
Messy.
Yeah, I agree with you. Can I also point out something that really grinded my gears, guys?
Ooh.
Sean is fired up.
I am, because I've been so excited for this event, and this issue really just like.
Listen, we had our turn with 3 Jokers, so.
Pretty good.
Professor Xavier has been other than Moira, the most like questionable character in terms of what the hell's going on. He's been wearing his helmet the entire time.
I wanted to bring this up too.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah.
And you take it off. And so when he took it off, I was like, oh my God, what does this mean? What are the implications? This is crazy. For it to be nothing, for that to mean absolutely nothing, for him to look how you expect him to look, act like you expect him to act, nothing changed. So what was the point of all that mystery and questioning for the last year plus?
Shit's weak.
They show Moira too in her house.
They did. That's right.
We've only seen her in Hoxpox.
Yeah.
So that ruined some of that mystery too.
But
Well,
also
that wasn't really a mystery though. We knew she was there.
Go on.
The last info dump page, Doug just mentions Warlock and they're working together, I guess. So that question's answered.
Oh, well, we've known.
Yeah, we've known.
You mean
that too.
Doug and Warlock are teamed up?
We know they're teamed up, but does everybody else know? Is what I mean. And he just put it in
I
this
see. Yeah.
feed or whatever.
I think you were absent for the giant size storm review.
No, I was here for that.
Okay, and we asked that question there as well. Was like,
yeah,
well, he's operating with Warlock. Does everyone else know what's happening? And I guess they just don't care about that question anymore. I guess they're just throwing it out the window.
Yeah,
I thought that was
and
very
that's what I mean. Like this, it's just here. I guess it's a thing now. Like,
and I guess there's an argument to be made that like they have bigger fish to fry, but like. That's again us making a leap in logic to explain something that doesn't make sense through the context of what we've come to understand.
But you're right. But even to Cale's point, it's like, yeah, it's one thing if in the moment of need he doesn't think about who knows what, but he's putting this down in a document.
In a doc, right?
Yeah.
So
it's
like,
supposed to be classified or whatever.
Right. With that in mind, it feels like a thing that we should have an explanation for. Whereas I think in the context of the other issue, we were able to ask a question and be like, oh, what does that mean? Right? Like that, whereas this, it just feels like totally out of left field of like, oh, okay, I guess that's resolved.
This really feels like messy editing at the end of the day. Like,
yeah.
Like these are the kind of things an editor is supposed to like keep track of and because like you have a lot of authors working on this. Like, a central figure to keep it kind of cohesive. It's messy.
But I mean, think of it like a TV writer's room. You go off, you meet, all the writers meet, and then they go off and write their separate issues, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
That's messy.
Yeah, it's definitely messy. And it's, I don't know that it'll matter in the grand scheme of things, because this issue achieved what it needed to achieve, and if it's just a bad issue among 22, then, like, okay, maybe it was a dumpy issue. But it is disappointing to come off of that first issue being, like, cool. Like, this has some momentum, and then feeling like Sean said, it just kind of sucks all the oxygen out of the room, and you're like, all right, great. Let's get to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it took all of the tension away. Even the rock slide reveal of him being wrong. At first, I was like, "Oh, this is insane!
Yeah.
Something that happened with Summoner, like, oh my God, he's evil or whatever." And then he's just normal. Like, look at that first panel where you see his face. I was like, "Oh, that's fucking creepy!"
Yeah,
like I had a very, very visceral reaction.
He seemed sinister.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had the same exact thought where I was like, oh shit, Cale was right. Like, oh my God, this is crazy. And like, it's still interesting in terms of the fact that like, he's this new character now, and he could be a new player. He could be a bad guy. We don't know, but like, it really took the wind out of the sails for me.
You know what? Like, if he was sinister, if he was like a more malevolent character or something, because of this composite of all the other versions of him or whatever they were trying to get to, that would have justified some of the space that's taken up here. But as it is, like I said, the book only establishes 2 things out of like 26 pages, and it regurgitates and repeats itself, and it takes up so much space to over-explain just 2 things. Like, there's not enough here to justify how much space is taken up.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the other events that do take place in the book. And one of the things we always compliment about the X books is whenever the council gets together.
Mhm.
This might be the only time that the council speaks to each other that I didn't care about it. I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
I liked, so Emma and Xavier argue over, what to do going forward in light of Rockslide's death, which she makes the point accurately that if his personality is dead, then he is dead. And this new Santo is not the old one, and that matters. And that's totally reasonable and valid.
Yeah.
The issue for me is, are all of them clear on what the stakes are here? Because she's like wanting them, I guess, to not to not progress with this war.
It's not really an option.
Exactly. That's what it seems like. And Emma's not really known for her emotional reactions to things, but I guess when it comes to children, she is.
Sure.
That is one of her weaknesses.
We've seen that a couple of times, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And go ahead.
Even that, like, it felt off to me. Because, like, I very much, like, the thing, I remember getting whiplash. There's this scene where she's like, because what does Charles say, right? Okay, so, right. It's after she says that this is, like, our catastrophic failure, right? And then the five explain, well, like, this is what happens, and you get the composite version, and it's not you, but it is you, but it's new. And then she goes, that is still death. This is permanent death we're discussing. Creating a new person does not overturn the loss of one of our people. Your apathy sickens me, Charles. Santo was one of our young. Where did Professor X express apathy? Like, I went back and reread it, and I was like, he's talking about it in a way that's calm, but, like, that makes sense. They're discussing a very serious issue, and then it makes sense that you would want cooler heads to prevail and talk through the mechanics of it. Where, like, she goes from, like, 0 to 100, and I'm with you, Sean, where, like, her expressing that as, like, hey, this is fucking serious, and we need to take it seriously, makes sense, is in character, but like all of a sudden going to like 10 and directing it at Charles and being like, what the fuck did you do? It's like, how is Charles any more or less responsible? He didn't know. It happened.
Speaking to that, he actually takes full responsibility on the prior page, or two pages prior.
He says it's my fault for not thinking about this, for not thinking that there could be a breakdown of the system and thinking it was foolproof. That's on me. He's taking total responsibility. How is that apathy?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. It totally feels like if it was another character, maybe I would be like, all right, like they're emotional. They're reacting to this thing emotionally. Emma's not like that. Like Emma's usually a cooler head.
So the Apocalypse, Professor X, and Magneto conversation, they are pissed at him. They are pissed. And I appreciated their anger with him because obviously ultimately he's the one that got them into this mess. And it begs the question, based on what we've seen so far, what reason do the X-Men have to involve themselves in this crisis?
I mean, I feel like it's just
Apocalypse.
They have to now, right? Like Apocalypse set it in motion, and then Krakoa was like, well, no, I want you to do this, so do it. And then they're like, all right, fuck, we're in it now.
Right.
Like, I don't feel like they elected to be in it, but they're in it now, and there's, like, no alternative, right?
Right. Okay. That satisfies me. So I guess with this scene, I really wonder how it's going to play or how it's going to pay dividends down the road. You know, these are kind of like the big three right now, I feel like. And it definitely seems like Professor X and Magneto are kicking him out the club in terms of their relationship with each other, at least for now. So when the smoke clears, I wonder where they will be in terms of their relationship.
I got the sense that Charles was
suits.
Sorry, go ahead.
No more suits. Like I see, no more big Paca.
No more Apocalypse in these dope ass
Completely
giant
that
suit.
happened.
Big Paca, that's good. I got the impression that Charles was less angry than Magneto, but I also feel like that's just their personality dynamics.
Yeah.
Like Magneto is more outwardly the type to say that kind of shit, you know?
Yeah, I feel like Xavier, when Krakoa was like, "No, you're doing this," Xavier was like, "All right, cool."
Yeah.
Yes,
And,
we're doing it.
and that's his attitude. He's like, "Well, this is what we signed up for."
Like
Yeah.
in this dynamic, right? Like I feel like Magneto is very much coming at this like "fuck you," like you fucked us, none of us are gonna miss you, like whatever. And Charles is like the disappointed dad, where he's like, "You chose not to heed the counsel, and now your hubris has doomed us all." Like that
Oh my
feels so
God.
much more like when your dad's like, "I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed."
Oh, Magneto is so disrespectful. I love it.
Dude, I love, we haven't really talked about the art, but I did really like the art in this issue. I love the shot of him laying in the healing gardens and they're over him, and Magneto's just behind with his fucking arms crossed and you can't see his face.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do need to close out, but we always have to discuss the art. And in this issue, I feel like you have it does look like the rest. Like it looks like the artistic language that Pepe Larraz has created with these characters, and Carlos Gomez does a solid job of, I don't want to say imitating because I don't know what he normally would do, and in conjunction with Israel Silva, who I'm not familiar with on colors, they cultivate a familiar look as it relates to what we've become accustomed to, and that's cool. There were some things that I wasn't all that happy with. I some of the posing of the characters I felt like was a little odd, especially Saturnine. She looked weird sometimes, and that bugged me on page 12 where she picks up the little Rachel and she's standing over her after she threw her. It just looks weird and odd. Like she has her hand on her hip. It's just it's not a pose that I feel like anyone would actually ever take.
Sure.
And that bothered me. And frankly, there were some pages and panels that I found it was hard to follow exactly what was happening.
Oh, really?
And yeah, normally I don't have that experience, but I'm trying to find the one in particular that really was odd for me. And of course, now having trouble finding it, which is typical. But in any event, I felt like it was a little more stilted and less bold than I'm used to. It stuck to more typical paneling, and that in conjunction with all of the dialogue made this not feel as explosive and energetic. Obviously, he's limited by the amount of dialogue he has to fit on the page and in each panel, and so you can't necessarily put that all on him. But those were my feelings on the album.
And boy, howdy, was there a lot of dialogue.
Yeah. Something I thought was interesting that I just wanted to touch on was that, like, I felt like Gomez's style, like, it kind of reminded me of what we talked about in our Battle Chasers book club, where, like, Joe Mad has that kind of, like, Eastern influence in his style, where there's, like, a bit that it feels a little anime or manga at sometimes. And I got that impression in this one, and it kind of took me back to the original run of, like, Ultimate X-Men a little bit. Where it is that very, like, 2000s kind of, like, it's got a bit of an anime vibe, you know? And I dug that about it. I thought that style worked well for the issue, despite some of the posts.
I was going to say, I very much did not. I think we said this about Fallen Angels. It felt, to that specific point, it felt like a bygone era of X-Men to me.
Okay, yeah.
And it didn't work for what they're putting down here.
There were 2 pages in particular I think stuck out on 31 where they're all kind of just discussing the round table, and where Emma mentions, you know, that we've lost Rockslide. The purple guy, I don't know his name, but the purple guy, and then in the next panel is Professor X. They have the exact same face, and you can see that across any interaction that they have.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Every interaction
Now
they
that you
have
say
is the
that.
exact same face.
Yeah.
And then also on page, where is it? On page, give it to me, 21, Siren as she falls. Her butt looks weird.
Well, now I gotta look. Hold on.
It looks. You know what it looks like? It looks like knees. Her butt
Right?
looks like knees. Yeah.
Right?
Oh, it gives new definition to tiny.
I really like as you were saying, like Sean like cocked his head.
Oh my
He's
god,
like,
it is knees.
She has ass knees.
I don't
Y'all,
think
she's
we're gonna
gonna-
top that observation.
Yo, imagine her at church
Oh wow.
in that
Here's
pew.
something.
I don't like that one.
Oh, that gives. I know you won. That gives new meaning to pew too.
All right. Any other comments before we close out here?
Phil, you fucking.
It hurts when I laugh. That's my last comment. Let's go.
All right. So we'll be back next week for 3 reviews. We've got 3 X books coming out next week. You guys are going to want to stick around, of course, to hear our thoughts on the entire series. We will be talking about X of Swords for the duration. So hopefully you guys enjoy the reviews. Let us know if you do by reaching out to us on our social platforms at The Comics Pals. You can write to us at thecomicspals@gmail.com. Of course, if you are watching this on YouTube, thank you. And make sure that you guys are subscribing. If you haven't, drop us a comment. Share this video with your friends. All of those things are free to do, and they help us out a lot more than they cost you. Discord. Join our Discord server. Come hang out with us. We're always having fun, interesting conversations, and a lot of times the conversations we have on this show carry over to the Discord. So if you want to take part in the conversations we're having here, come join the pals on Discord. Thank you for keeping with us on this extended episode. If you are still with us right now, it's been a doozy, and we really appreciate it. Let's get into the plug spiel before we jump off. Pete.
Thanks for joining us here in another episode of the Comics Pals. If you want to connect with me, I'm at @loud_Pete on Twitter and Instagram. Come chat with me about what you are reading, watching, listening to these days. Always looking for new recommendations, and I've gotten a couple great ones from you listeners, so I hope you'll write in and let me know what you're into these days. If you want to get some more content from me, you can head over to lootpots.com, where I host a weekly Nintendo podcast, the Potscast. That's it. Be well. Take care of each other.
All right, Cale.
You can find me on our Discord. Don't find me anywhere else unless you want to come look at pictures of my dog on Instagram. Otherwise, you can find me at TotoInto. That's TOTOINTOW. You can find my work at caleward.com. That's CALEWARD.com. Go read Chainsaw Man.
All right, Marco.
Mute it, buddy.
Hello?
Yeah.
That was weird.
Okay.
You can find me at Mr. Marco Enomoto on Instagram and Twitter. Come talk to me about... tell me who you want to be our first guest on the brand new podcast, Batman Interviews. We'll have
We'll
a
workshop the
rotating...
name.
We'll workshop the name, but we have a rotating cast of guests
that's it.
coming from
Be well.
musical artists. We'll have comedians and your occasional comic book writer. Tell us who you want to be our first guest. Otherwise, I'm still on the Dragon Ball binge. I'm almost done with it. I just finished the Tien fight, and I think it's gonna be Piccolo and somebody else, and then we'll see what happens.
Good stuff coming. Check out the new Batman podcast, Batman Pakistan to Afghanistan. I had to think of where
Like
space
that.
goes coast to coast.
I think my head just exploded.
Yeah, don't like that one
Nice.
bit.
As for me, you can follow me at Cyborg Bebop on Twitter and Instagram, and it's been a crazy week in the news, so that's where my Twitter feed's at.
As for me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram only at Sean Soapbox. Hit me up to talk about whatever you are interested in, because I don't know what I'm interested in right now. I'm interested in the good comics. That's what I'm interested in. With that, we're the Comics Pals signing off. Take care, guys.
See you next week.
Man, I ran to Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
That's better.
Not really.